Yeah. I'm not so embarrassed about the frizzy hair, but my face is all red. Hmm. But yeah, I guess it's worth it. Let me show you this view. Oh my gosh. Might as well open with that. Mm. Look at that. You just walk down and play in it. Which is what I just got back from doing. That's why I look like this. It's vacation, right? So, happy Wednesday, world. I'm never too busy for the rad chat. Oh gosh. We gotta keep this going. We're trying to do important things around here. I'm sure our lovely friend Kat will be joining us any moment. I'm just gonna find us a little spot to sit on the side patio here. I forget everything in the house, because I don't need my stuff, right? It's vacation. I don't need stuff. Oh. I did though. I came in from that seat just for y'all. Because I do believe in what we're doing here, Even if it's a little obtuse sometimes. And yeah, gosh, I hope she is here soon. Let me forget. Notebook, maybe. Oh, here she is. Oh. Hello.
How
How
are
you
you?
doing?
I'm doing
Oh,
good.
sunburnt and
Yeah,
frizzy.
you're
How are
red.
you? I know. I'm actually
I'm
so
okay. I'm
embarrassed.
tired. I'm tired.
Ah.
My friend came back from Nova Scotia back here again.
Oh.
So yeah, unexpectedly because of court and his sister and all that. Like, so he came
Oh.
down to support as like support. So he, of course, forces me to go out and do all the vacation things with him. Like, yeah. Well, like
You're so put upon,
he
Kat.
wants to go
You're
there, he wants to
so.
do this and all that, right? Like go to all these places. I'm like, oh, drag my ass. I'm tired.
Yeah. I sympathize, actually. Oh my god, this railing's not wide enough to hold my tripod up. I am sad. That was my whole plan.
I know.
Well. I'll drag this table out there. Oh, let me show you this place, actually. Are you ready?
Sure, let's see. I love the green, by the way. Ooh, where are you?
Carolina, North Carolina.
Yeah, I was gonna say that looks like almost like Myrtle Beach out there.
Yeah, pretty close. And yeah, the paint job is amazing.
It's so bright.
Yeah. And they've got, stuff up on the walls, like a vacation house,
Yeah.
But oh, it's super cute. And it's up on stilts.
Yep. Yep.
Like, get
All
out of
those
those.
houses around there usually are, right?
Yeah, they all are.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that crap. Look at this. You got a boardwalk under here. I don't know. I just think it's super cool.
Yeah.
We got here the first day and we were just like, ocean! And all ran out and just jumped in the water in our clothes. Like,
Nice.
because we've been in the car for like 5 hours,
Oh yeah. And you don't really get the opportunity to swim in the ocean not much, do you?
No. It's been 20 years, I think.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm just crazy to me because I'm an island girl, so like I'm surrounded by ocean all the time.
Right. Well, we live in the mountains, and
Yeah.
people come vacation to see them too. And we're just like, yeah, it's foggy today.
Well, that's the good thing about living where I live is that we have both. Like we have mountains like real close to the ocean. So
well, you're just spoiled.
I know. I love it here.
No, but the Smoky Mountains are particularly well known for their picturesque beauty,
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like, oh, look, it's foggy today. Well,
yeah. Just because it's what you're used to. Sometimes I'm like, I've shown people where I'm like, oh, where I've been like around the island, right? Oh, I'm going over here. It's like, oh my God, look at that. I'm like, yeah.
You just live in a beautiful place and you're blasé to it.
Like, oh, I couldn't live there.
Yeah. He's talking about he wants to move here now.
Yeah. Ocean will do that to you.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Definitely an occasion to remember.
That's good though.
Yeah, and it's probably good to take a minute out and do this and get back to the real world for a minute. I forgot what day it was. Like,
really?
I did.
Hilarious. I'm still stuck in the real world. Oh.
I know. We went a lot of trouble to escape it for a few days, so I was going ahead and doing that. But
yeah.
Shit's I'm gonna pull that table out here. Really? Did I miss anything important? She asked rhetorically because I know I must have.
Oh yeah, like just more of the same thing. Like Larry Ellis bought everything media. He just finished acquiring TikTok. He's like a billionaire Zionist. So now all like everything is just like every sort of critique on Israel is now disappearing off every platform because he also owns Paramount. He owns everything now, basically.
Right. I think he was buying starting Warner to do that before I left.
Yeah, and then the flotilla happened. They got close to Gaza, but they did get kidnapped by Israel in international waters. Greta Thunberg was tortured, especially hard. So,
right. Yeah. Oh, somebody's here. Karen Cans now show the green car sahur. What? I don't know what that is. I can't show the green one because I don't know what that is. Anyway.
Let's see. Hold on.
We get some random commenters, I guess. Rana said hi. Shoot, I'll say hi to anybody.
That's probably
assuming
just
it's not. No, I know. I'll say hi to bots, I guess, because I don't. I mean,
because if you usually what happens is right when you talk about Israel because they have bot farms, right? A bunch of them. Yeah. Usually when it comes in, like when there's like that word that comes up in a conversation, they'll have bots that are pretending to be like jihadists and like will come and say things like that make no sense because it's supposed to mold perception about like what's going on, right?
This one is literally named Karen.
It doesn't matter.
No, I just think it's funny.
Yeah, I know, right?
And human beings have a really easy way of getting around that.
What?
We use other words.
I know, but you shouldn't have to because if you keep using other words, people are not going to know what you're talking about.
No, I know. It's not a perfect system. I'm just saying the bots will never stamp all that out. That's insane.
Oh, yeah. No, by now, like, it doesn't matter what they do. The perception is pretty much settled.
Right. Are they really worried about... Are they really worried about public sentiment? I'm sorry, but like...
Yeah, that's a little bit too late.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You
can acquire TikTok now and you can acquire CBS and you can do all these things. It's not going to matter. We watched a genocide for 2 years straight live stream.
Like that ship has sailed, y'all.
Like, just to be like, oh, that doesn't matter.
Right. That ship has sailed, y'all. I guess they're just going to hope that we don't tell our children about it,
Yeah, but the way children are going, they know how to work the computer more than anyone. They know it's the boomers that are still like, well, I don't know. It's the people that are younger. They're like, no, this is not okay.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. I guess they're hoping that moving forward generationally, we just somehow magically forget about that.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're hoping. That's the hope that they can be how we talk about, the indigenous and like kill them all. And then just like after a few years when that dust settles, that we can all just, make a day out of it and, talk about how bad it really was. But, but still have all the land, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what they're hoping for. It's like, no, because the time difference, like of back then to now is going, like, we've got records of it. People saw it. People knew. It's a little different, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's easier to convince people that they're, I don't know, I feel like back then it was being easier to convince people that they were just a bunch of savages and not quite, like, not that people were more racist back then. They were just
there's no way for them to communicate with each other too. So it was just, it was easier. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Genocide was easier back in the day.
Right? So, but because of how it is globally, like, we have global communication, like, people are able to, like, get information that they never previously could before. Right. It's harder to control that the propaganda model, but they're really trying. They bought everything now.
They're really trying. Yeah. Wow.
They've been sending the National Guard still to all the different liberal, like, cities.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Besides Portland.
Portland. I think there's, like, Illinois,
Chicago.
Yeah. Chicago, Illinois, and they're just gonna keep doing this, right? Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to normalize it.
Right.
Trying to normalize having a military state.
Well,
basically,
and
what happened in Gaza, what happened with what was going on in Gaza, which is, like, military was, like, in control of, like, their movements and communications, everything, right? You had to have like certain, like, they had to have permission to go to certain places. They couldn't leave, right? Because it was basically a prison. What they've done there is what they're going to be doing here. So they're deploying the National Guard. So they're militarizing now. They've already set up all the detention centers for people who don't comply. So yeah, it's just watching that go down. I was like, yeah, what a shit show.
Wow.
And then after the West, the US has that sort of set up, it's going to start trickling down to, like, the UK, Canada, and all that other Western-backed nations, right?
Yeah. Usually, it's funny. A lot of times things flow downhill to us from the UK. So, which I know sounds weird, but, like, culturally and politically, I look over there and I'm like, holy shit,
Yeah.
That's been consistent for a while and it's confused me, but
why?
Well, because, like you say, America has the giant propaganda machine. You'd think that everything would roll downhill from here, but
it does. They don't like in England. They just had, like, looked like millions of people, but it wasn't millions. I mean, it was like 500,000 people, like, march in the streets, which Tommy Robinson at the head, like, talking about, the immigrants are rapists and stuff like that, and, like, starting a fucking, like, race war.
Right,
like, it's
and
bad
that's been building over there for years.
You go out, like, and come back into England, you get fucking detained if you have any pro-Palestinian fucking beliefs.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and it's rolling downhill to us from there, and that seems backwards to me, but
it's not. It's from America rolling to the UK.
They're so much further advanced with it than we are.
No.
They're actually detaining people for saying the wrong things.
They're disappearing people without even reason. And in the States, literally, taking people off the streets, and they've disappeared, and you don't know what they happened to them. They've sent the National Guard to places now. They've built up detention centers. No. America's way farther along. You probably just don't notice it because Tennessee is a more stable place.
I just don't remember the part where they were arresting people for saying the wrong thing here. Like, that didn't happen. I don't think it happened.
It happens all the time. What are you talking about? Like,
no, right. But, like, not that, okay. That weird thing where the cops literally show up at your house in the UK and say, you tweeted a bad thing, you have to come and talk to us. Like, I don't...
They're not really doing that. Like, okay, there's this one thing that got big or something, but it was a lie. What it was that her daughter impersonated someone else and then sent photos, like, how should I say this? Sexual photos and of some girl and spread them around, pretending she was her. That's why the cops went to the house. But
this has happened bunches of times over in the UK. Like, people get
same in
detained.
Canada. They came to my house too. But, like, the thing is, they're not disappearing people.
No, I know. I'm just saying, it's just...
And it's for speech as well. And they have actually detained and people not for saying the wrong things when it comes to foreign policy, because that's the big thing. That's the big thing. Like they've taken George Galloway, who is literally like a political leader, that he's for the Workers' Party, and they detained him for the whole day when he was trying to get back into the UK, and his wife, and they tried to like get his phone code to get into his phone to steal all of his information. He's got things on there, sources, people in Parliament, all their information on his phone. He's like, I'm not doing it, and they're they are totally detaining people for it, and they're totally detaining people for speech here. Like when you're talking about tweets and stuff like that, when it comes to like Graham Linehan. Well, Graham Linehan, yeah, it seems a little bit like still a little bit too much, but he's still literally threatened violence. That could be interpreted that way. These people have not been threatening violence, and they're still so. When it comes to the culture war thing, that's like nothing compared to now. And I have a sneaking suspicion, seriously, that most of that transgender shit was just a pretext. It was a way to see how that could be done and put it forth. And we know that because of the paper that a journalist Kit something, he works at the Gray Zone, anyways, that the right wing were funding quote unquote liberals all over the place in other countries because they are very disruptive, and it's a way to politically control and stir up the chaos between working class people so they can come in and scoop up and and enforce things. If they're doing that over there, they're doing that here. So I think it was just a big psyop at this point.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, it definitely was. It certainly wasn't to save all the poor trees. But like, my son made a good point this morning because he was talking about AI, and he was talking about how you can just get a free app now that lets you make any kind of AI video you possibly want. He's like, why would they do that?
I can't hear you because of the wind.
Oh, fucking
hell! Sorry, it's a little windy.
It is. It's that sea breeze, and then this house, none of the windows open. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
A lot better. Okay, so your son made a good point. What did you say about AI?
Well, he was talking about how he had seen where there's a free app, apparently, that is a video maker. So any idiot can, for free, make whatever AI video they want. And he's like, why would they do that? Why would they allow that? Why?
Well, why not?
Because he was worried about all the misinformation that could be created and put out that way.
Yeah, that's the point.
Exactly. That's what I said. I said that you've got it right there. Yeah. Why would they? It's almost like somebody wants that.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point.
Right. No, but so he's only 17. And he's, smart, I guess. But like, a decade ago, I would have looked and felt like a conspiracy theorist talking about the curation of popular culture.
Yeah.
But like, I dare try and put out an album, I dare you. Like, try and publish a book. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, books are less so, but like music is very bad.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing I don't like any of the music out there.
No, I'm not saying that the music is bad. It is. But the reason that it's bad is because...
I know. I just wanted to put that in there.
You're right. It's because as an artist, if you don't, you're either in... Oh, Greek girl says she has to hook up her headphones. Cool beans. As an artist, like, you have like 2 avenues to go down, and they mold the shit out of you in order to force you down these pipelines. And if you don't, you just never get big. You just never do.
Like a lot of the fucking like the like Interscope and all that, they're run by the CIA because it helps mold and cultivate the culture.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not,
that was the whole thing with Diddy, right? Because how do you think he got all those tactics of filming people, like blackmail, like, and doing all that? Yeah, and the reason why they make that kind of music, the rap, craze or whatever, is so that they can mold black people into being criminals so that they can put them in jail and start an industrial complex.
You know what the worst part is? I heard that at a party 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
Like people have known this, or like some people in the community have been onto that or something.
Yeah, that's because you said that last time too. Like, yeah, that's crazy. Well, because they would have meetings, like big meetings with these artists and like producers and stuff, and talking about investing in the prison system.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's going to be so profitable. And then that way also like it helps like keep and distract the working class into like a race war instead of, you know, coming together and looking at the actual enemy, which is them.
Right. Oh my goodness. I saw the most interesting video the other day. I wonder if Black America isn't starting to deconstruct.
What do you mean?
Their faith. Like, okay, some of the most, it's like white American Christianity is very white supremacist. You are a Black American Christian. You are working against yourself.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. I don't understand that whole.
Well,
yeah.
So, you know, if they deconstructed as a group, well, that would be so amazing and could probably really tip the scales in interesting ways around here.
But even like, I know that there's like in the Black community, but like it really depends on interpretation. A lot of like Black churches and stuff like that are very like believe in it, the good aspects of like the Bible, the interpretation of it, right? And so they're very into humanitarian work. So
I'm not saying it's all bad, but
no, I know you're not. I'm just saying so like either, and so you have a lot of those as well, and so I don't really think that's going like. But most people, even with those communities, most people are still secular. So I don't know how much of a deconstruction it is, or
I don't like no. Like that has not been my experience. No.
Statistically, that's because a lot of people live in the metropoles, right? And so I'm talking about places like that. Whereas more rural America, yeah, they're gonna have.
No, I mean I lived in an urban area that was heavily Black for 20 plus years, and like these people have faith. They are people of faith, okay? Like whatever you want to say.
Even those people of faith, they have under the Black, especially the Black. Get away, cat. So the Black community that do have faith, a lot of it, like they interpret it as very humanitarian, like approach. And where so the ones, so I don't know how much of those in the community are like really in the whole Judeo-Christian or like white supremacist type like arenas where they preach that kind of stuff, right?
No, not
see many of the. So even if they did, I don't know if it's going to be much of a thing if they did or didn't have the faith, because when they do, it's usually not like, you know, this same sort of institution that the nationalists are in.
No, but it holds them back personally, professionally, culturally. I've seen it. Like, anyway, I think it would be nice. Is all I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, I think it would be nice if nobody.
Yeah.
But like, I just don't.
Yeah, but I guess
you can't really tell people what to believe and what not to believe, right?
So. No, but like Black America has an identity outside of that, as opposed to like, say, Southern Baptists who really kind of
well, that's what I'm saying. They have a whole identity that's different with that religion than with the ones that are very like evangelical. You know what I mean? In the worst possible way.
Yeah, I just, girl, you need to go to a Black church. Like what?
I need to what?
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I need to go to church.
Go to a Black church and see how they are. Like they are. Anyway, it's fine.
I don't think they're the same institutions that you see that with a lot of money and power. I just don't. And like you could see, because they don't really have many Black people in that.
No, right? Because it's like they're not. I've met too many self-hating Black men. I don't know. It's one of those things that makes you sit up and go, what? Where did you get all of this? Anyway.
It's weird. It's the same way I see when Indigenous people here, because we don't really have like a big Black community, right? Obviously, we didn't have slaves in Canada the same way, but like
Right.
because the Indigenous here and they talk like about like colonial institutional religion and they believe it. It's just like wow, right? It is weird to me. It is weird.
It makes me kind of sad, and I don't know if that's a white guilt thing. Am I allowed to be sad about that? Is that kosher?
It's sad just on a humanity thing, like because I think that the institution of religion is absolutely deplorable, and it's sad that anyone believes it.
Well, yeah. You want to talk about? We could go on about like women and feminism all day there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, because name me a religion that isn't sexist. Because I haven't found one.
Yeah, no. Well, I don't believe in religion. I'm not. I don't believe in religion because there's no proof of it. It's based off of faith. I don't ever believe things off of faith, off of just because I told you so. That's what faith means. Believe me because I say so. Like so, no, give me proof or fuck your fuck that. Like you can't make like I cannot process something that I don't know and believe in it. If I don't,
right.
Like,
and you're supposed to just
for it. Like
you're supposed to just go with gut feeling, and turn your brain off.
In any way proof at all. That's not even like I said before. It's not even like circumstantial evidence. There is no evidence.
That's a good point.
Really? Right.
Yeah. Sorry, we went on Sunday. We went to
Catholic mass, eh? Why?
And we were staying at their house for the weekend.
I still wouldn't have gone. And fun.
Oh my gosh! I just have curiosity about what other people believe.
Well, see, my mom's Catholic. I've been to Catholic. Right?
Okay.
So
see,
I don't need to know anymore. I know
now. No, I was raised by an atheist and a Wiccan. So
yeah, no, my whole
when I go to church, I feel like I'm on an anthropolog.
Huh? But then again, there you go. Like it's Irish Catholic. It's like so the colonizers of Ireland, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Still just as weird to me that you just go along with that then.
Agreed. No, they're Roman Catholic. But still haven't been to an Irish Catholic mass, now you point that out. That's a good I don't know what they do. But they probably do
really much. I don't think there's much of a difference.
Oh, they probably do Latin, which would be boring because I can't understand Latin.
Yeah.
But like, girl, he was like literally the sermon was about how we are slaves to the Lord. And I'm like,
well, yeah.
I'm just gonna see myself out. I am a slave to no man. What the fuck?
In my there's a lot more evidence to suggest that religion is just a way to use mass propaganda on a bunch of people.
Right. No, and this is actually going to be, I'm going to make this point in the video that I'm going to finish working on after we get home, which is that, like what do they call them? Heavenly laws or the laws of God? What's that term? Holy law, something like that.
Commandments?
Like, if your God makes laws, they're called the laws of physics.
Yeah.
How can you break divine law? What the fuck? What?
Yeah.
That sounds like an excuse for people to tell other people what to do.
Well, exactly.
That's all that is.
Religion is.
Yes.
So.
No, and like around here, oh my God, they have billboards. They have billboards that say Jesus is God or Jesus is not God or blah, blah, blah. I don't even remember. And I'm like, if your almighty deity needs advertising, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
You had to hire a PR guy and get a billboard for your almighty God? What the fuck?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Pope has a PR agent.
Yeah. Well.
The handler.
Why should we need a Pope?
We don't.
Really? No, I just theoretically. If there is an almighty deity, why would you need an intermediary? I'm just saying.
Because of us plebs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite
You know what?
topics.
You know
It's
what?
just so
I will
full of
say
shit.
this. Pope Francis wasn't that bad of a pope.
Mm.
I actually like he spoke out about the Gaza thing
Right.
right from the beginning. Like
Right.
he even gave his you know his little vehicle.
Yeah.
He gave it gave it to so that like as a way to get for fundraising and stuff like that for the Gazans. Like he gave a lot of his shit to them to help like get them out of there. But yeah, he said, and then he instructed people like other bishops and stuff to go to Gaza to help out.
Mm.
So
Mm.
and other things too that suggest that he was actually pretty for a pope, not too
You're
bad.
right. You're right. And the
There's a
new
lot of
guy's from
things. There's a
Chicago.
lot of history there that just were very bad.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the new guy is literally from Chicago. So.
what was one that I was hoping that one of them would get in because of his name. It was so funny, like De Pizzeria or something. It was some sort of big pizza last name, and it was so funny. There's just one podcast I watched, and they were just rooting for him because of his last name, right? Like he didn't make it though, but he was on the list of like possibilities.
Yeah, no, we got Pope Leo. I don't know if that's his real name. Probably not, because they always change their names.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's an American guy.
No, I know. Yeah.
And they had to substitute somebody under 70 this time.
I think he did go to Gaza as
I
well.
I should have asked my Catholic friend about it. She would have known.
Yeah, she would have. Can't really remember who it was though.
They have 5 daughters too, so they're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
Oh,
drenched.
Which Oh.
Sorry.
Anyways, yeah, and I got to rock a baby to sleep for the first time in 8 years.
How was that?
I was sitting there. It was very sweet. Staying with our friends, they're nice, and their kids are all under. They're all.
Other than my own
my
kid,
little guy has somebody to play with. Well, you don't have enough Catholic friends who are still popping out babies in their 40s.
Oh no, like I've got friends that like have kids and like not that pretty recently. I'm just not a baby fan. Other people's babies.
I'm
interesting.
I'm not like a fan. They're nice. They're like puppies. They're fun to play with, and I'm glad I don't have one.
I don't know, these sticky and oozy.
Like puppies. Yeah, they're messy.
I'm not a fan.
That's why I'm glad I don't have one.
I'm not a fan of puppies either, though.
Right,
so maybe something wrong with me. I just like cats. And I kind of like rats and bunnies. They're kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah. I kind of have an idea of like different personality types and the different animals that they enjoy.
Yeah.
That puts you more in the corner with like my sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ferrets. I like ferrets. They're kind of cool looking.
Ferrets are creepy. Oh no!
So
you know what's really creepy?
What?
The creepiest animal I've ever met in real life: an ostrich. I know that sounds bizarre. You wouldn't think an ostrich would be creepy, but they're like birds with snakes for necks. I don't know. It was the creepiest thing.
They look like somebody. They look like a bald old man.
And they're 7 feet tall, and they stare down at you like, "What do you want?"
They're big. They're big. Oh
yeah. Yeah. And they stare down at you like, "What do you want? What are you looking at?"
Oh yeah, we have ostrich
and I'm like,
farms in BC. Right?
What?
We've got ostrich farms a lot in BC. A lot of them.
Oh. So you know how creepy they are.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Because I had never seen one until a couple of years ago. We went to a zoo and they were right there. And I was like, oh my God.
Turkeys are pretty weird looking too, and actually are quite vicious. We have wild turkeys here in my city. Wild turkeys.
We have wild turkeys at home too. They kind of stay away from people. I've never actually been into them, but I see
You gotta
them.
be careful if you go out and you're by yourself and you get into a flock of turkeys. You better run.
I'll remember that. I will remember that. Okay.
Good.
And I know birds can fuck you up.
Big birds, yeah. Birds will prey too.
Yeah.
Well, I told you what happened when I was camping one time, right? At night,
Maybe.
I was walking to the house, and I saw, there's an owl, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I'm walking, all of a sudden, it whooshed by me, right? And then I kept walking, and it whooshed by closer. Then closer, I felt its wings because breathed through my hair. I was like, oh my God. And then I just ran to the fucking outhouse. This was in the middle of the night. I was on an island with nobody around. If I get attacked by a bird of prey, I'm dead. My kid is sleeping in the tent. He's only like 5 or 6. There's no way to even get off the island. I don't have a boat there. I took the island boat, but like I don't have a personal, like there's no cars. There's nothing here. There's no phone. I don't have a and so I ran it. I was like, what the fuck? And then I realized it dawned on me because I've got like a mohawk, like a little tiny, like I cut my hair. So what it was
down here.
What it was is that I'm like, oh my God, my hair. It thinks it's a fucking field mouse. It was trying to get my hair on the top of my head because they thought it was a field mouse.
Oh my God.
Because the way it's cut. So I put on my hoodie and I was able to go back and I didn't see it anywhere. So I was like, go ahead, just make sure to wear my hoodie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so scary though.
If it fucking swooped and got me with its claws,
yeah,
it would have gouged me. It could have killed me.
Dude, those near misses are so scary, aren't they?
Yeah, because there's a bunch of field mouse on this island. Like you had to be careful. You had to put your food away in like a box, like the lead box, not a lead box, but like a secure box
a lock
that they
box,
have there for you, and lock it because the animals will get it. And there's tons of field mice. Like if you like try to get back to your campsite, they literally bump you because they're running around everywhere. They're not very bright, so they'll run into you with like if you at night. They come out at night, which is fine, right? They're not like dirty or rats. These are wild field mice, so they're really cute. They're adorably cute, right? But like,
what do you think about people who are afraid of mice? Isn't that weird?
Kind of. Like I could see maybe if it's like a urban mouse because they have disease.
Yeah, but I mean to see one and just like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, that's weird.
Like some people do spiders,
like me.
Like at least spiders are creepy looking.
Yeah, they look creepy when they walk. It's just so unnatural to me. Like it's just so like predatory.
Right.
But
and like I'm not afraid of spiders. I'm the one they all call for spiders. But like I get it.
See, I'm afraid of spiders. I like got this visceral fear of spiders when they're big. And
they're creepy looking as all hell. And like I do feel like the little I feel the jumpy, but I'm not I don't have the panic, I guess.
We get them really big, the regular grass spiders that look like wolf spiders. They're not actually wolf ones, but they look almost like them. We get the big, like the size of like your whole palm and fist, or
Ooh, okay, that's bigger than we get them at home. We get them about the size of a nice silver dollar, like a big.
No. We get them huge here. Oh, they big. They like
and they're just grass spiders.
They're like tarantula size here.
Wow, that far north? Huh.
Yeah. But like they're not any more aggressive. They're not aggressive like they're not aggressive. But like still just see them, it's the look of them. It's the look of them.
Right, no, they're creepy as fuck. They are. They like to come in our house. Right. Actually, last week we had it's this time of year, it's starting to get cold at night. And my daughter asked me, why are the spiders attacking us? I said, honey, they're not. They're just trying to stay warm at night.
No, that's exactly what it is. This is the time they come in because they're cold. They want to come in.
Yeah, but so as soon as I pointed out to her it's autumn, she was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But she was freaking out for a minute because we had like 3 in 2 days.
Yeah, they're creepy as fuck. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing when it comes to like the mice. Like mice, but I can see people being scared of rats.
Yeah.
And not liking them because like say for here, they also grow big here. We got swamp rats.
Yeah. Like rats get big.
They almost are like a small dog. That's how big they are. And they're aggressive.
That's going to come after you. Yeah. That's scary.
Like I had a neighbor with a dog who they would always have it tied up outside. It was horrible. But like it was a German Shepherd. It got attacked and bit by a big rat, a swamp rat here. And it had to be put down. It was that bad.
Oh my God, how awful.
Like they make it big up here.
Yeah, no kidding. And aggressive, apparently. It's going to attack a tied up dog? Good Lord. That was just that sounds like
fucking shepherd. Because it couldn't go anywhere because it was tied up outside unsupervised.
No, I know. So what is that rat just being sadistic? What the fuck? It's not like the dog was chasing the rat.
It could have been. Because he had like one of those leashes that was like on a line. So it would run back and forth.
Okay. I mean, that sounds like the rat.
It would turn around and it will attack back. Like they make them big up here and they make them vicious.
It just almost sounded premeditated on the part of the rat. Like, fuck that dog. I'm going to get him tonight.
It's premeditated murdering rats up here. Murderous rats.
Fuck that dog. I'm going to get him tonight. You watch.
Yeah, you watch. When it's alone, strike.
Right, yeah, wow. Ooh.
Crazy though, eh?
There he is, tied up. See, he can't get away.
Yeah. And it was tied up, so he couldn't get away from it.
Yeah, that's fucked up. That's an aggressive fucking rat. Oh my God.
So I can see maybe why, but that's because I live in a different environment here. Like I can see why someone might have a fear. You know?
I really can't speak for the environment around here because we've only been here for 3 days.
Yeah, how is it there? Like, how is it swimming and all that?
Oh my gosh, there is a big storm off the coast, so the surf is really strong. Waves knock you down.
Yeah, because it's like the ocean. Like when I go to the ocean, it's not like on the east coast part of the island, so which is like the mainland on the opposite, like very close to it, so it's not as crazy choppy. But you go to the west coast, right onto the Pacific, and you got to be careful because that will sweep you away.
Right. It's getting every day has been milder. Like Monday, it was real strong, and I wouldn't let kids go in the water because that undertow is pulling the sand right out from under us. I'm like, nope.
Yeah, the riptide. Yeah, you gotta be careful of that. You have to know how to deal with that. Like if you're gonna be swimming in the ocean, you know how to get out of a riptide.
Right. It was well, we're going out and we're hanging on to each other and going up to knee deep and letting them knock us over is what we're doing.
Yeah. Which isn't too bad. As well, it depends if it has sneaker waves. I don't know if that area has sneaker waves.
What are those?
Oh, they're where, depending on where it is, like in the world, like I know Iceland has a few of them, where there's places where it just, because of the current and like that, all of a sudden you'll get like little regular waves, and then all of a sudden, boosh, it'll come up like real high, and it was so powerful and strong, and it's like the whole thing is a riptide, and it'll take you, sweep you off your feet, and grab you right into the ocean.
No, I don't think they have that kind of thing here.
Up on you, right? You don't know what they have. They just randomly, like, they'll be like one of them every once in a while.
Right. Well, the reason I say I don't think that kind of thing.
Waves take people in Iceland at the I forget what they call it. It starts with an R. It's in Icelandic, but it's they have sneaker waves. And like you see, so many tourists go there, but they try to fuck around and find out, and they go up, and then they try to run away, like and laugh and all that, and all of a sudden they'll get a sneak wave, and it'll knock them over and pull them in.
Yeah,
because people just die all the time. They get taken by the sea.
Wow.
Yeah,
I don't think it's like that here. This is Carolinas, it's all tourists. I mean,
yeah. Well, I wasn't too sure because I know there's just some like we have those and certain like on the West Coast. And people still go swimming there, but
the only reason the surf is this high is because of the storm.
Yeah.
And it's blowing out so they're getting lower every day. They've been lower since we've been here so far.
That's
but
good.
that first day was actually a good introduction because the kids have been to the Great Lakes, right?
Yeah.
But those are lakes.
Yeah, they're big, but they're lakes still. Ocean's different.
Right. They just don't have rip tides like that for the most part.
Yeah, and around that area, that's like the prime spot with the hurricanes and shit like that.
Right. And so I got to, yeah. So I got to take them out to the ocean and introduce them to the riptide and be like, see, this is not a lake, is it? No, it's not. This is not fun and games. This is not a pool, is it? No. Like,
not even a wave pool. It's different.
Yeah. I didn't have to stand looking out at perfect glass still water and try and tell them about riptides, Be like, it looks pretty, but it can be dangerous. No. We got a demonstration right off the bat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's always important too if you're going to be swimming in the ocean to learn about how to get out of one too. I don't know if you do.
Mm-hmm. Swim sideways.
Yeah, basically, you swim sideways. You don't try to swim to shore. Let it take you, but swim sideways because you'll never ever make it. It'll win. It'll win.
It will. Yeah, I know.
And it'll just exhaust you, and you're just swimming in one spot until you're too exhausted. It'll take you out further. Yeah.
Yep. And
you'll be exhausted, and then
you'll drown. Yep. Nature is a terrifying mistress. I'm used to it though, because like we talked about the hiking and whatever, and heck, you go out way further than I do, and there is the occasional moment where you realize, hey, nobody will ever find me if anything happens to me right now. Like,
right?
So it's beautiful, but you have to respect it,
Yeah, there's so many stories when people are gone hiking that they just go off trail just a little, and they don't find them until it's too late. And they will be right next to the trail, but you just don't know, right?
Or they never find them.
And it's sad though because there's a few kids now missing in some of the national parks that haven't been found yet.
Oh, up there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to say there's
Alberta on the border of British Columbia and Alberta and the Rockies. 5-year-old autistic boy was walking with like 4 of his siblings or something, older siblings.
Yeah.
But just they weren't paying attention, and he just walked into the bush and just didn't come out.
Right. Yeah. There's dozens, if not hundreds, of stories from our national parks like that.
Yeah, it happens here too.
Yeah, it probably happens everywhere, what with the wilderness and all.
Yeah.
That's what I blame. I blame the wilderness and people not taking it serious,
Yeah, I'm like, why would you have just your kids watching your kids? Like, I don't know. Some people, I don't know. When I would take Ryder camping, and he's gone camping with me ever since he was like a toddler.
Yeah.
But I would be with him 24/7.
Right. You don't just leave him sit to play with sticks while you go take a bath or something in the river.
Yeah, or like have him walk to and from somewhere, unless it's like somewhere where you can keep your eyes on him until he's older, at least. Like but like at 5 and autistic, like you really should have been watching where what was going on, watching him.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to blame the parents too much, but I'm kind of like well, now you know, like that was like that's harsh. But I know it's harsh to say, but like, what were you thinking?
No, yeah. And I'm pretty sure ours just all came up from the beach.
And not just that, you don't know, like 5 years old, that's cougar bait shit. There's wild animals who would take advantage of that shit. Right?
Yeah. Now I gotta go upstairs to make sure everyone is safe. So I'm gonna do that while we talk.
Make sure everyone's Good.
I just gotta lay eyes on everybody. We keep talking, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different if they're in the house or like just
Well, they were
around
on the
just like a
beach.
vacation home. But I'm talking about like in the middle of the Rockies, in the middle of like nature.
No, yeah. No, yeah. And I'm just paranoid. I'm just paranoid like that. I just,
Yeah.
you know. And I
Well, I
have
was
kind of
that, and I'm
two.
also like an only mom too, right? So like, I definitely like paranoid. I only have one. I only need a spare.
Right. Imagine like I have it both. I have it going both ways because I have an 8-year-old who's still young enough that I have to tell him not to do things that could kill him. And then I have a 17-year-old who is old
Yeah.
enough that I can't tell him what to do all the time anymore.
Yeah.
And I can't try unless I want to drive us both insane.
Oh God, right?
And I'm trying to
I probably
continue
am going to be
these.
that mom that is going to be like that though. Like 70 years old, I'm still going to try to tell you what to do.
Okay, I see one. I didn't see one. Oh, no. Two. Where are the boys? Okay. Of course. It's time for sunscreen.
Oh, who's
He's
here?
gonna burn again.
Geek girl in the house. I don't know when she put that in.
Oh yes, that was a while ago. Let me see if I can get their attention.
Nice.
Ah, I don't think it's working. I'm afraid to walk down there. We're gonna lose our Wi-Fi.
Well, don't worry about it.
Oh, you didn't see that sunburn yesterday.
You can always like if you wanted to take a second break, you could just go down there, just leave it up here, and I could just talk to
Okay.
myself.
Okay. I'll go get them. You can sit here and watch me do it, I
I'll hang out
guess.
with myself wherever because I
You
don't think
can
anyone else
sit
is here
here
right
and
now.
here I can set up the shop so you can watch me walk down there if you want. That might be funny.
Well, it doesn't matter. I was just gonna explain what we're gonna be going over today anyway.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Woo.
Have fun.
Watch my fucking tripod fall over in the wind while I'm gone.
Right? That'd be so funny. Okay, so I'll try to set this up better. Well, she does that. I'm just going to explain what we're going to be reading today. So, day 4, we got chapter 3, colonization and housewifeization. So, we'll be going over the dialectics of progress and retrogression, subordination of women, nature, and colonies, the underground of capitalist patriarchy or civilized society. We have the persecution of the. What is making that noise? Are you there? That's weird. Okay. Okay. Anyways, so we have the persecution of the witches and the rise of modern society, women's productive record at the end of the Middle Ages, the subordination and breaking of the female body, torture, burning of witches, primitive accumulation of capital, and the rise of modern science, colonization and primitive accumulation of capital, women under colonialism, women under German colonialism, white women in Africa, and housewifeization. So that is what we'll be doing today once she gets back.
Oh, good.
Hello? You're back.
Yeah.
Good, because I have really bad
I can hear you anyway. Can you see me?
I can't see.
I'm
No,
I'm
I see
waving
the
my
beep.
arms. Good enough.
Okay, yeah. I'll be right back though. I have to go to the washroom all of a sudden really badly, so I'll be right back.
Go figure. Okay.
Right? Just great, perfect timing.
Yeah. That boy had such a bad burn yesterday. And I just am not having that again. So help me. Boy, this is a great workout. Just walking in the sand, girl. Okay. So, here we go. Owen. How am I supposed to spray you with sunscreen when you're all wet? Well, I guess you get to wait now. I don't know what else to say. Towel there. Towel. Yes, that's a towel. Oh, boy. All right. So, we don't want to leave this in the sun, as I was saying. It's not a good idea to leave bottles under pressure in the sun. Need some water now. Freaking YouTube no longer keeps playing if I switch apps. Oh man, seriously? Do you have an Apple device? My Apple never did that.
Hello, I'm back. Thanks for allowing me 5 minutes.
Aces, you're good. Geek Girl says freaking YouTube no longer keeps playing if I switch apps.
Weird.
Yeah. Did they start doing that on Droid as well? That would suck.
So we should probably get into it.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Let you to sit for a little bit, get your breath.
Yeah.
Running
I'm actually going to put you back where you were and let you watch the surf while you read.
Oh, perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful scenery. That sounds great.
Yeah, did you dry off a little bit? All right. Let me spray you down. She's going to start reading so I can be a little more flexible.
Yep.
I'm hot.
You're hot?
I'm dry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also on the TV.
All right. Here we go. I'm going to mute myself.
Right. Yep. All right. So we're starting with, so chapter 3, colonization and housewifeization. And we'll start with the dialectics of progress and retrogression. On the basis of the foregoing analysis, it is possible to formulate a tentative thesis which will guide my further discussion. The historical development of the division of labor in general, and the sexual division of labor in particular, is not an evolutionary and peaceful process based on the ever-progressing development of productive forces, mainly technology and specialization, but a violent one, by which first certain categories of men, later certain peoples, were able, mainly by virtue of arms and warfare, to establish an exploitative relationship between themselves and women and other peoples and classes. Within such a predatory mode of production, which is intrinsically patriarchal, warfare and conquest become the most productive modes of production. Quick accumulation of material wealth, not based on regular subsistence work in one's own community, but on looting and robbery, facilitates the faster development of technology in those societies which are based on conquest and warfare. This technological development, however, again, is not oriented principally towards the satisfaction of subsistence needs of the community as a whole, but towards further warfare, conquest, and accumulation. The development of arms and transport technology has been a driving force for technological innovation in all patriarchal societies, but particularly in the modern capitalist European one, which has conquered and subjected the whole world since the 15th century. The concept of so-called progress, which emerged in this particular patriarchal civilization, is historically unthinkable without the one-sided development of the technology of warfare and conquest. All subsistence technology for conservation and production of food, clothes, and shelter, etc., henceforth appears to be backward in comparison to the wonders of the modern technology of warfare and conquest, such as navigation, the compass, gunpowder, etc. The predatory patriarchal division of labor is based from the outset on a structural separation and subordination of human beings. Men are separated from women whom they have subordinated. The own people are separated from the foreigners or heathens, whereas in the old patriarchies, this separation could never be total. In the modern Western patriarchy, this separation has been extended to a separation between man and nature. In the old patriarchies, such as China, India, Arabia, men could not conceive of themselves as totally independent from Mother Earth. Even the conquered and subjugated peoples, slaves, pariahs, etc., were still visibly present and were not thought of as lying totally outside of the economy, the hierarchically structured social universe, which was seen as a living organism. And women, though they were exploited and subordinated, were cruelly important as mothers of sons for all patriarchal societies. Therefore, I think it is correct when B. Ehrenreich and D. English call these pre-modern patriarchies gynocentric. Without the human mother and Mother Earth, no patriarchy could exist. With the rise of capitalism as a world system based on large-scale conquest and colonial plunder, and the emergence of the world market, it becomes possible to externalize or exterritorialize those whom the new patriarchs wanted to exploit. The colonies were no longer seen as part of the economy or society. They were lying outside civilized society. In the same measure as European conquerors and invaders penetrated those virgin lands, these lands and their inhabitants were naturalized, declared as wild, savage nature, waiting to be exploited and tamed by the male civilizers. Similarly, the relationship between human beings and external nature, or the earth, was radically changed. As Carolyn Merchant has convincingly shown, the rise of modern science and technology was based on the violent attack and rape of Mother Earth, henceforth conceived as a living organism. Francis Bacon, the father of modern science, was one of those who advocated the same violent means to rob Mother Nature of her secrets, namely torture and inquisition, as were used by church and state to get at the secrets of the witches. The taboos against mining, digging holes in the womb of Mother Earth were broken by force because the new patriarchs wanted to get at the precious metals and other raw materials hidden in the womb of the earth. The rise of modern science and mechanistic and physical worldview was based on the killing of nature as a living organism and its transformation into a huge reservoir of natural resources or matter, which could be analyzed and synthesized by man into his new machines, by which he could make himself independent of Mother Nature. Only now, the dualism, or rather the polarization between the patriarchs and nature, and between men and women, could develop in its full and permanent destructive potential. From now on, science and technology became the main productive forces through which men could emancipate themselves from nature, as well as from women. Carolyn Merchant has shown that the destruction of nature as a living organism and the rise of modern science and technology, together with the rise of male scientists as the new high priests, had its close parallel to the violent attack on women during the witch hunt, which raged through Europe for some 4 centuries. Merchant does not extend her analysis to the relation of the new men to their colonies. Yet, an understanding of this relation is absolutely necessary because we cannot understand the modern developments, including our present problems, unless we include all those who were defined into nature by the modern capitalist patriarchs. Mother Earth, women, and colonies. The modern European patriarchs made themselves independent of the European Mother Earth by conquering first the Americas, later Asia and Africa, and by extracting gold and silver from the mines of Bolivia, Mexico, and Peru, and other raw materials and luxury items from the other lands. They emancipated themselves on the one hand from their dependence on European women for the production of laborers by destroying the witches, as well as their knowledge of contraceptives and birth control. On the other hand, by subordinating grown African men and women into slavery, they thus acquired the necessary labor power for their plantations in America and the Caribbean. Thus, the progress of European big men is based on the subordination and exploitation of their own women, on the exploitation and killing of nature, on the exploitation and subordination of other peoples and their lands. Hence, the law of this progress is always a contradictory and not an evolutionary one. Progress for some means retrogression for the other side. Evolution for some means de-evolution for others. Humanization for some means dehumanization for others. Development of productive forces for some means underdevelopment and retrogression for others. The rise of some means the fall of others. Wealth for some means the poverty for others. The reason why there cannot be unilinear progress is the fact that, as was said earlier, the predatory patriarchal mode of production constitutes a non-reciprocal, exploitative relationship. Within such a relationship, no general progress for all, no trickling down, no development for all is possible. Engels had attributed this antagonistic relationship between progress and retrogression to the emergence of private property and the exploitation of one class by the other. Thus, he wrote in 1884, quote, "Since the exploitation of one class by another is the basis of civilization, its whole development moves in a continuous contradiction. Every advance in production is at the same time a retrogression in the condition of the exploited class, that is, of the great majority. What is a boom for the one is necessarily a bane for the other. Each new emancipation of one class always means a new oppression of another class." End quote. Engels speaks only of the relationship between exploiting and exploited classes. He does not include the relationship between men and women, that of colonial masters to their colonies, or of civilized man in general to nature. But these relationships constitute, in fact, the hidden foundation of civilized society. He hopes to change this necessarily polarized relationship by extending what is good for the ruling class to all classes. With, quote, "What is good for the ruling class should be good for the whole of the society with which the ruling class identifies itself," end quote. But this is precisely the logical flaw in this strategy. In a contradictory and exploitative relationship, the privileges of the exploiters can never become the privileges of all. If the wealth of the metropoles is based on the exploitation of colonies, then the colonies cannot achieve wealth unless they also have colonies. If the emancipation of men is based on the subordination of women, the women cannot achieve equal rights with men, which would necessarily include the right to exploit others. Hence, a feminist strategy for liberation cannot but aim at the total abolition of all these relationships of retrogression progression. This means it must aim at an end of all exploitation of women by men, of nature by man, of colonies by colonizers, of one class by the other. As long as exploitation of one of these remains the precondition for the advance, developed, evolution, progress, humanization, etc., of one section of people, feminists cannot speak of liberation or socialism. Next subchapter, subordination of women, nature, and colonies, the underground of capitalist patriarchy.
You can't hear me. Hello. Can you hear me now?
Hi.
See, that was a big, like, that's why feminism is for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's not,
If the thing
it
is,
doesn't
if you
mean,
only focus on the exploitation of men and women, you're never going to get rid of it because that is ingrained in our society.
Yeah, right. But I don't know. I feel like what I got from her writing that was more like everything should be focused toward, like everything funnels towards feminism, as opposed to feminism being funneled towards everything else and like watered
Yes,
down.
exactly. because it's one of the first exploitatives that happened. So it's this foundation, right? It's the foundation of class was women. So it needs to be focused on, and that's why there's been such a fucking consistent like focusing on not worrying about that. That's a whole other like thing that you need to wait and all that. It's like, no, that's the foundation of it, right?
Right. And it's like, as opposed to where like feminism has been made to be for everybody, and it's not.
It's
more like
should be focused on feminism.
Everything is. It's right. It's like everything is about feminism. It's like the other. Yeah.
And you'll never gain like that true relationship of equal, of non-exploitation if you don't focus on like the cause, the creation, the foundation.
Right. And it's getting the privilege of exploiting other people is the
that's
liberation.
Why voting for Hillary Clinton isn't going to do much, because she doesn't give a shit about women. She will like use them. She's not like this. It's not. You can't just use it as an identity without the understanding the economy of where we are either.
No, right. So if you give them the privilege of exploiting other people, then a lot of them will just take that as the liberation that they were after, and then that is like a consolation prize almost. Like,
and that's why you don't want to be assimilated to this. You want to abolish it altogether. That kind of relationship, and so just
which to me is what radical feminism means.
Because the whole way that it's organized for civilization is you have to exploit others.
Right. Yeah. And it's been patriarchal from the ground up.
Yep.
Yeah. And that to me is what radical feminist means. I know that we've run into the whole, like, I swear to God, she herself a couple of weeks ago used it more as in like, oh, that's a radical idea, in that context. And I'm just like, I kind of hate that word now, because like, it legit has two meanings. And
it does have two meanings, and that's but I'll still use radical. I don't care, because I'm not going to allow it being colonized. Radical means to get to the root. It is radical. It is radical because it's a whole transformation. It doesn't. You might want to mean it is extremist.
Right. Which is the word extreme. Whoops.
God damn it.
You there?
There.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, the word extremist has been very much changed.
Because it is an extreme abolitionism is extreme. It's just not terroristic. It doesn't have to be.
Right. No. Right.
But that's what they're trying to infer. Like, it.
That's what they mean.
But it's not what it means. And so
that word has become loaded.
Yeah, it really has.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I completely agree with what she's saying, and yet it sounds like she's saying feminism is for everybody, but I feel like that's not what she means.
No, it's so that's one way that it's been sort of colonized almost. Right?
Yeah, very much so. Like, Bell Hooks is the one who's famous for saying that. I was shocked to learn that. I was like, seriously?
Yeah. But they've taken it and they twisted it around to a very liberal idea. But the thing is not to be liberal, is to be an abolitionist. Which is
kind of the opposite of liberal.
You can't just you just can't like rely on DEI or something, because that's like the.
Oh yeah, because the system is self-correcting. Didn't you know?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, so what was I?
Yeah. Sorry, go on. It's so good.
It's just so good. Yeah, it is. Okay, subordination of women, nature, and colonies, the underground of capitalist patriarchy or civilized society. In the following, I shall try to trace the contradictory process briefly sketched out previously, by which, in the course of the last 4 or 5 centuries, women, nature, and colonies were externalized, declared to be outside civilized society, pushed down, and thus made invisible as the underwater part of an iceberg is invisible, yet constitute the base of the whole. So exactly like what you said, right? It's the base of the whole. Methodologically, I shall try as far as possible to undo the division of those poles of the exploitative relations, which are usually analyzed as separate entities. Our understanding of scholarly work or research follows exactly the same logic. as that of the colonizers and scientists. They cut apart and separate parts, which constitute a whole, isolate these parts, analyze them under laboratory conditions, and synthesize them again in a new man-made artificial model. I shall not follow this logic. I shall rather try to trace the underground connections that link the processes by which nature was exploited and put under man's domination to the processes by which women in Europe were subordinated, and examine the processes by which these two were linked to the conquest and colonization of other lands and people. Hence, the historical emergence of European science and technology and its mastery over nature have to be linked to the persecution of the European witches. And both the persecution of the witches and the rise of modern science have to be linked to the slave trade and the destruction of subsistence economies to the colonies. This cannot be a comprehensive history of this whole period, desirable though this might be. I shall mainly highlight some important connections which were crucial for the construction of capitalist patriarchal production relations. One is the connection between the persecution of the witches in Europe and the rise of the new bourgeoisie and modern science and the subordination of nature. This has already been dealt with by several researchers. The following analysis is based on their work. The historical connections between these processes and the subordination and exploitation of colonial peoples in general, and of women in the colonies in particular, has not yet been adequately studied. Therefore, I shall deal with this history more extensively. So we got next, the persecution of the witches and the rise of modern society, women's productive record at the end of the Middle Ages. Among the Germanic tribes who occupied Europe, the housefather, Pater Familias, had power over everything and everybody in the house. This power, called Munt, or Old High German, and Mundium, or Manus, as in hand, implied that he could sell, build, etc., wife, children, slaves, etc. The munt of the man over the woman was established through marriage. The relationship was one of property rights over things, which was founded on occupation, kidnapping of women, or purchase, the sale of women. According to Germanic law, the marriage was a sales contract between the two families. The woman was only the object in this transaction. By acquiring the munt power, the husband acquired the right over the wife's belongings, as she was his property. Women were lifelong under the munt of their men, husband, father, son. The origin of this munt was to exclude women from the use of arms. With the rise of the cities since the 13th century and the emergence of an urban bourgeoisie, the whole house, the earlier Germanic form of the extended family and kinship, began to dissolve. The old potestas patriae, the power of the father over sons and daughters, ended when they left the house. Wives were put under the munt, or guardianship of the husband. However, if unmarried women had property of their own, they were sometimes considered mundig, or major, before the law. In Cologne, unmarried women who followed some craft were called selbstmundig in 1291. The laws prevailing in the cities, as well as some laws for the countryside, freed women in the crafts from the munt or dependence of a father or husband. The reason for this liberalization of sexual bondage has to be seen in the need to allow women in the cities to carry on their crafts and businesses independently. This was due to several factors. 1. With the extension of trade and commerce, the demand for manufactured goods, particularly clothes and other consumer goods, grew. These goods were almost exclusively produced in the household of craftsmen and women. With the growth of money supply in the hands of the patricians, their consumption of luxury goods also grew. Costly clothes of velvet and silk, lace collars, girdles, etc. became the fashion. In many of these crafts, women were predominant. However, in Germany, married women were not allowed to carry out their business or any property transaction without the consent of their husband, who continued to be their guardian and master. However, craftswomen or businesswomen could appear before a court as witnesses or platants without a guardian. In some cities, the businesswomen or market women were given equal rights with the men. In Munich, it was stated that, quote, a woman who stands in the market, buys and sells, has all rights her husband has, end quote, but she could not sell his property. The independence of the medieval crafts and market women was not unlimited. It was a concession given to them because of the rising bourgeoisie needed them. But within the family, the husband retained his master role. 2. The second reason for this relative freedom for women in commerce and crafts was the shortage of men at the end of the Middle Ages. In Frankfurt, the sex ratio was 1,100 women for every 1,000 men, according to a 13th century consensus. In Nuremberg, in 15th century, the sex ratio was 1,000 men to 1,207 women. The number of men had diminished due to the Crusades and constant warfare between the feudal states. Moreover, male mortality seemed to have been higher than female mortality because of the men's intemperance in all sorts of rivalries. Among the peasants in South Germany, only the eldest son was allowed to marry because otherwise the land would have been divided into holdings too small to be viable. Journeymen were not allowed to marry before they became masters. The serfs of the feudal lords could not marry without the consent of their lords. When the cities opened their doors, many serfs, men and women, ran away to the cities. City air makes men free was the slogan. The poor people in the countryside had to send their daughters away to fend for themselves as maidservants because they could not feed them until they were married. This all resulted in an increase in the number of unattached single or widowed women who had to be economically active. The cities in the 12th and 13th centuries did not exclude women from any craft or business which they wanted to take up. This was necessary as, without their contribution, trade and commerce could not have been expanded. But the attitude towards economically independent women was always contradictory. In the beginning, the crafts guilds were exclusively men's associations. It seems they had to admit some craftswomen later. In Germany, this did not occur before the 14th century. Mainly weaver women and spinsters and women engaged in other branches of textile manufacture were allowed to join guilds. Weaving had been in the hands of the men since the 12th century, but women did a number of ancillary jobs, and later also female master weavers are mentioned for certain branches like veil weaving, linen weaving, silk weaving, gold weaving, etc., which were only done by women. In Cologne, there were even female guilds from the 14th century. Apart from the crafts, women were mainly engaged in pâté trade, in fruits, chicken, eggs, herrings, flowers, cheese, milk, salt, oil, feathers, jams, etc. Women were very successful as peddlers and hawkers, and constituted a certain challenge to male traders. But they did not engage in foreign trade, though they advanced money to merchants who traded with the outside markets. The silk spinners of Cologne often were married to rich merchants who sold the precious products of their wives in far-off markets in Flanders, England, at the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, at the big fairs in Leipzig and Frankfurt. Only one merchant woman is mentioned who herself traveled to England in the 15th century, Catherine Sienmengerid from Denzing. I probably butchered her last name, sorry. In the 15th and 16th centuries, however, the old European order collapsed, and there became to be a European world economy based on the capitalist mode of production. This period is characterized by a tremendous expansion and penetration of the rising bourgeoisie into the New World, and by pauperization, wars, epidemics, and turbulence within the old core states. According to Wallerstein, this world economy included, by the end of the 16th century, Northwest Europe, the Christian Mediterranean, Central Europe, the Baltic region, certain regions of America, New Spain and the Antilles, Peru, Chile, and Brazil. Excluded at that time were India, the Far East, the Ottoman Empire, Russia, and China. Between 1535 and 1540, Spain achieved control over more than half the population of the Western Hemisphere. Between 1670 to 1680, the area under European control went up from about 3 million square kilometers to about 7 million. The expansion made possible the large-scale accumulation of private capital, which was used to finance the rationalization of agricultural production. One of the most obvious characteristics of this 16th century European world economy was the secular inflation, the so-called price revolution. This inflation has been attributed to, in one way or the other, to the influx of precious metals, bullion, from Hispano-America. Its effect was mainly felt in the supply of food grains, available at cheaper prices. In those countries where industry expanded, it was necessary to turn over a larger proportion of the land to the needs of the horses. Grain then had to be bought in the Baltic at higher prices. At the same time, wages remained stagnant in England and France because of institutional rigidities, and even a decline in real wages took place. This meant greater poverty for the masses. According to Wallerstein, 16th century Europe had several core areas. Northern Europe, which is the Netherlands, England, France, where trade flourished and where land was used mainly for pastoral purposes, not for grain. Rural wage labor became the dominant form of labor control. Grain was imported from Eastern Europe and the Baltics, the periphery, where secondary serfdom or feudalism emerged as the main labor control. In Northern and Central Europe, this process led to the great pauperization of peasants. There seems to have been population growth in the 16th century, and the pressure on the towns grew. Wallerstein sees this population pressure as reason for out-migration. In Western Europe, there was immigration to the towns and a growing vagabondage that was endemic. There was not only the rural exodus due to the eviction and the enclosure system, there was also the vagabondage caused by the decline of feudal bodies of retainers and the disbanding of the swollen armies by which had flocked to serve the kings against their vassals. These wanderers, before they were recruited as laborers into the new industries, lived from hand to mouth. They were the impoverished masses who flocked around the various prophets and heretic sects. Most of the radical and utopian ideas of the time were concerned with these poor masses. Many poor women were among these vagabonds. They earned their living as dancers, tricksters, singers, and prostitutes. They flocked to the annual fairs, the church councils, etc. For the Diet of Frankfurt, 1394, 800 women came. For the Council of Constance and Basel in 1500, came. These women also followed the armies. They were not only prostitutes for the soldiers, but they also had to dig trenches, nurse the sick and wounded, and sell commodities. These women were not despised in the beginning. They formed part of medieval society. The bigger cities put them into special women's houses. The church tried to control the increasing prostitution, but poverty drove too many poor women onto and into the women's houses. In many cities, these prostitutes had their own associations. In church processions and public feasts, they had their own banners and plates, even a patron saint, Saint Magdalene. This shows that up to the 14th century, prostitution was not considered a bad thing. But at the end of the 14th century, the statutes of Marin rule that prostitutes should stay away from public feasts and dances where burghers, women, and other honorable women ate. They should have a yellow ribbon on their shoes so that everyone could distinguish them from the decent women. The witch hunt, which raged through Europe from the 12th to the 17th century, was one of the mechanisms to control and subordinate women, the peasants and artisan, women who, in their economic and sexual independence, constituted a threat for the emerging bourgeois order. Recent feminist literature on the witches and their persecution has brought sorry, hold on. My phone went off. Yeah. Sorry. Where was I? Recent feminist literature on the witches and their persecution has brought to light that women were not passively giving up their economic and sexual independence, but that they resisted in many forms the onslaught of church, state, and capital. In one form of resistance were the many heterodox sects in which women either played a prominent role or which, in their ideology, propagated freedom and equality for women and a condemnation of sexual oppression, property, and monogamy. Thus, the Brethren of the Free Spirit, a sect which existed over several hundred years, established communal living, abolished marriage, and rejected the authority of the church. Many women, some of them extraordinary scholars, belonged to the sect. Several of them were burnt as heretics. It seems plausible that the whole fury of the witch hunt was not just a result of the decaying old order in its confrontation with the new capitalist forces, or even a manifestation of timeless male sadism, but a reaction of the new male-dominated classes against the rebellion of women. The poor women freed, that is, expropriated from their means of subsistence and skills, fought back against their expropriators. Some argue that the witches had been an organized sect which met regularly at their witches' Sabbath, where all poor people gathered and already practiced the new free society without masters and serfs. When a woman denied being a witch and having anything to do with all the accusations, she was tortured and finally burnt at the stake. The witch trial, however, followed a meticulously thought-out legal procedure. In Protestant countries, one finds special secular witch commissions and witch commissioners. The priests were in constant rapport with the courts and influenced the judges. One persecutor, Benedict Kopsovov, first a lawyer in Saxonia, later professor in Leipzig, signed 20,000 death sentences against witches. He was a faithful son of the Protestant Church. If someone denounced a woman as a witch, a commission was sent to that place to collect evidence. Everything was evidence, good weather or bad weather, if she worked hard or if she was lazy, diseases or healing powers. If under torture the witch named another person, this person was also immediately arrested. And then next is the subordination and breaking of the female body, torture. So give me a sec here. Here are the minutes of the torture of Catherine Lips from Betzelsdorf in 1672. Quote, after this, the judgment was again read to her, and she was admonished to speak the truth, but she continued to deny. She then undressed willingly. The hangman bound her hands and hung her up, let her down again. She cried, woe, woe. Again she was pulled up. Again she screamed, woe, woe, Lord in heaven help me. Her toes were bound. Her legs were put into Spanish boots. First the left, then the right leg was screwed. She cried, Lord Jesus, come and help me. She said she knew nothing, even if they killed her. They pulled her up higher. She became silent. Then she said she was no witch. Then they again put the screws on her legs. She again screamed and cried and became silent. She continued to say she knew nothing. She shouted her mother should come out of the grave and help her. They then led her outside of the room and shaved her head to find the stigma. The master came back and said they had found the stigma. He had thrust a needle into it, and she had not felt it. Also, no blood had come out. Again, they bound her at hand and feet and pulled her up. Again, she screamed and shouted she knew nothing. They should put her on the floor and kill her, etc., etc., etc. Quoted from Becker, and I can't read that part. Oh, it was from a book by Becker in 1977. In 1631, Friedrich von Spee dared to write an anonymous essay against the tortures and the witch hunt. He exposed the sadistic character of the tortures and also the use of the authorities, the church, and the secular authorities made of the witch hysteria to find a scapegoat for all problems and disturbances and the unrest of the poor people, and to divert the wealth of the people from them against some poor women. Quote, 31st October, 1724. Torture of Inike Fristineries from Coesfeld, Munster. Wherever that is. I think it's in Germany. After the accused had been asked in vain to confess, Dr. Gregorius announced the order of torture. He asked her to tell the truth because the painful interrogation would make her confess anyway and double the punishment. After this, the first degree of torture was applied to her. Then the judge proceeded to the second degree of torture. She was led to the torture chamber. She was undressed, tied down, and interrogated. She denied to have done anything. As she remained stubborn, they proceeded to the third degree, and her thumbs were put into screws. Because she screamed so horribly, they put a block into her mouth and continued screwing her thumbs. 15 minutes this went on. The screws were loosened and tightened alternately. But she pleaded her innocence. She also did not weep, but only shouted, I am not guilty. Oh, Jesus, come and help me. Then, your lordship, take me and kill me. Then they proceeded to the fourth degree, the Spanish boots. As she did not weep, Dr. Gogravius worried whether the accused might have been made insensitive against pain through sorcery. Therefore, he again asked the executioner to undress her and find out where there was anything suspicious about her body. Whereupon the executioner reported he had examined everything meticulously but had not found anything. Again, he was ordered to apply the Spanish boots. The accused, however, continued to assert her innocence and screamed, "Oh, Jesus, I haven't done it. I haven't done it. Your lordship, kill me. I am not guilty. I am not guilty." End quote. This order went on for 30 minutes without result. Then Dr. Gorgavius ordered the fifth degree. The accused was hung up and beaten with 2 rods, up to 30 strokes. She was so exhausted that she said she would confess, but with regard to the specific accusations, she continued to deny that she had committed any of the crimes. The executioner had to pull her up till her arms were twisted out of their joints. For 6 minutes, this torture lasted. Then she was beaten up again, and again her thumbs were put into screws and her legs into Spanish boots. But the accused continued to deny that she had anything to do with the devil. As Dr. Gorgavius came to the conclusion that the torture had been correctly applied according to the rules, and after the executioner stated the accused would not survive further torturing, Dr. Gorgavius ordered the accused to be taken down and unbound. He ordered the executioner to set her limbs in the right place and nurse her. So, the next is burning of witches, primitive accumulation of capital, and the rise of modern science. The persecution and burning of the midwives as witches was directly connected with the emergence of modern society. The professionalization of medicine, the rise of medicine as a natural science, the rise of science and the modern economy. The torture chambers of the witch hunters were the laboratories where the texture, the anatomy, the resistance of the human body, mainly the female body, was studied. One may say that modern medicine and the male hegemony over this vital field were established on the base of millions of crushed, maimed, torn, disfigured, and finally burnt female bodies. There was a calculated division of labor between church and state in organizing the massacres and the terror against the witches. Whereas the church representatives identified witches, gave the theological justification, and led the interrogations, the secular arm of the state was used to carry out the tortures and finally execute the witches on the pier. The persecution of the witches was a manifestation of the rising modern society and not, as it is usually believed, a remnant of the irrational dark Middle Ages. This is most clearly shown by Jean Bodin, the French theoretician of the new mercantilist economic doctrine. Jean Bodin was the founder of the quantitative theory of money, of the modern concept of sovereignty, and of mercantilist populationism. He was a staunch defender of modern rationalism and was at the same time one of the most vocal proponents of state-ordained tortures and massacres of the witches. He held the view that for the development of new wealth after the medieval agrarian crisis, the modern state had to be invested with absolute sovereignty. This state had, moreover, the duty to provide for enough workers for the new economy. In order to do so, he demanded a strong police, which above all would fight against witches and midwives who, according to him, were responsible for so many abortions, the infertility of couples, or sexual intercourse without conception. Anyone who prevented the conception or the birth of children he considered as a murderer, who should be persecuted by the state. Bodin worked as a consultant of the French government in the persecution of the witches and advocated torture and the pier to eradicate the witches. His tract on witchcraft was one of the most brutal and sadistic of all pamphlets written against witches at that time. Like Institutoris and Springer in Germany, he singled out women for his attack. He set a ratio of 50 women to 1 man for the witch persecutions. This combination of modern rationality, the propagation of the new state, and a direct violent attack on the witches were also found with another great master of the new era of European civilization, namely Francis Bacon. Similarly, there is a direct connection between the witch pogroms and the emergence of the professionalization of law. Before that period, the German law followed old Germanic custom. It was people's law or customary law, but not a discipline to be studied. But now Roman law was introduced. Most of the universities established a law faculty, and several universities, like the University of Frankfurt, consisted in fact only of the law faculty. Some, some contemporaries complain about the universities. Quote, they are good for nothing and train only parasites who learn how to confuse the people, how to make good things bad and bad things good, who withhold what is rightful from the poor and give what is not his right to the rich. And quote from Johnson in 1903. The reason why the sons of the rising urban class were flocking to the law faculties was the following. It's our time's jurisprudencia smiles at everybody, so that everyone wants to become a doctor in law. Most are attracted to this field of studies out of greed for money and ambition. The witch trials provided employment and money for a host of lawyers, advocates, judges, counsels, etc. They were able, through their complicated and learned interpretations of the authoritative texts, to prolong the trial so that the costs of the trial would go up. There was a close relationship between the worldly authorities, the church, the rulers of the small feudal states, and the lawyers. The latter were responsible for inflation of fees and filled their coffers by squeezing money from the poor victims of the witch hunt. The fleecing of the people was so rampant that even a man like Elector of Trier, the Archbishop of Trier, was one of the 7 princes who elected the German Kaiser, Johann von Schauschenberg, who had himself had several hundred people executed as witches and sorcerers, had to check the robbing of the widows and orphans by the learned jurists and all others connected with the witch trials. Some of the rulers set up accountants to check what the various officials had done with the money extracted and the fees they had demanded. Among the costs for a trial were the following: for the alcohol consumed by the soldiers who pursued a witch, for the visit the priest paid to the witch while in prison, for the maintenance of the private guard of the executioner. According to canon law, the property of the witch was to be confiscated, irrespective of whether there were heirs or not. The bulk of the confiscated property, never less than 50%, was appropriated by the government. In many cases, all that was left over after the deduction of the costs for the trial went to the state treasury. This confiscation was illegal, as the Constitutio Criminalis of Emperor Charles the Fifth, the V, whatever that one is, proclaims in 1532, or maybe it's the 8th, I don't know. Anyways, but this law had only paper value. The fact that the witch hunt was such a lucrative source of money and wealth led in certain areas to the setting up of special commissions which had the task of denouncing ever more people as witches and sorcerers. When the accused were found guilty, they and their families had to bear all the costs of the trial, beginning with the bills for alcohol and food for the witch commission, and ending with the cost for the firewood for the stake. Another source of money was the sums paid by the richer families to the learned judges and lawyers in order to free one of their members from the persecution if she was accused as a witch. This is also a reason why we find more poor people among those who were executed. Manfred Hams has brought to light yet another dimension of the political economy of the witch hunt, namely the raising of funds by the warring European princes to finance their wars, particularly the 30-year war from 1618 to 1648. From 1618 onwards, the law of Charles prohibiting the confiscation of property of the witches and sorcerers was virtually abandoned, and witch hunts were specifically organized or encouraged by some of the princes in order to be able to confiscate the property of their subjects. Hams gives us the example of the city of Cologne and the dispute that arose between the city fathers and the Elector Ferdinand of Bavaria, the ruler of the diocese. The city of Cologne, a rich center of trading and industries, had remained neutral for a long time during the 30-year war. In the beginning of the 17th century, the city had seen a flourishing trade, mainly in silk and textiles. Nevertheless, the city had paid considerable sums into the war funds of the emperor. This was made possible by an increase in taxes. When foreign armies were marauding and looting the villages, many rural people fled into the free and neutral city. The result was a scarcity of food supplies, which led to tensions among the people and even to open riots. At the same time, the witch trials against Catherine Hernot started, which was followed by an intense witch hunt. When the first judgments were pronounced, the Elector Ferdinand of Bavaria, who had to pay his armies, presented a bill to the city authorities. In this bill, he claimed that all the property of executed witches should be confiscated and go to the The city council tried with all means to prevent the implementation of this ordinance. They asked the lawyers to make an expert study of the law, but the elector and his lawyers finally proclaimed that the bill was an emergency measure. Since the evil of witchcraft had assumed such dimensions in recent times, it would be politically unwise to follow the letter of the law, namely Constitutio Criminalis of Charles prohibiting confiscations, word by word. However, the lawyers of the city were not convinced and they suggested a compromise. They said it was fair and just that the persons who had been involved in the witch trial, the lawyers, executioners, etc., would get a fee as compensation for their hard work and the time they had spent on the trial. The elector, as he could not press money out of the urban witch hunt, confiscated all the property of the witches executed in the rural areas of the diocese. But not only the feudal class, particularly the smaller princes who could not compete with the rising bourgeoisie in the cities or the bigger lords, but also the propertied classes in the cities were using the confiscation of witch property as a means for capital accumulation. Thus, in Cologne itself in 1628, 10 years after the beginning of the war, the city authorities had introduced the confiscation of witch property. One of the legitimizations forwarded by the lawyers of Cologne was that the witches had received a lot of money from the devil, and that it was perfectly in order that this devil's money be confiscated by the authorities to enable them to eradicate the evil breed of sorcerers and witches. In fact, it seems that in some cases the cities and the princes used witch pogroms and confiscations as a kind of development aid for their ruined economies. The city fathers of Mainz did not make much fuss about legal niceties and simply asked their officials to confiscate all property of the witches. In 1618, the monastery of St. Clare of Hoquiam had donated them 2,000 guilders for the eradication of witches. There is a report of the bailiff Guise, who wrote to his lord of Lindhem, asking him to allow him to start with the persecution because he needed money for the restoration of a bridge and the church. He noted that most of the people were disturbed by the spreading of the evil of witchcraft. Quote, "If only your lordship would be willing to start the burning, we would gladly provide the firewood and bear all other costs, and your lordship would earn so much that the bridge and also the church could be well repaired. Moreover, you would get so much that you could pay your servants a better salary in future, because one could confiscate whole households, and particularly the more well-to-do ones." End quote. Apart from the big bloodsuckers, the religious authorities, the worldly governments, the feudal class, the urban authorities, the fraternity of jurists, the executioners, there grew up a whole army of smaller fry who made a living off of the burning of witches. Begging monks wandered around and sold pictures of the saints, which, if swallowed by the buyers, would prevent them from being afflicted by witchcraft. There were many self-appointed witch commissioners. Since the authorities paid fees for the discovery, the arrest, and the interrogation of witches, they accumulated money by wandering from place to place, instigating the poor people to see the cause of all their misery in the workings of the witches. Then, when everybody was in the grip of a mass psychosis, the commissioner said he would come to eradicate the pest. First, the commissioner would send his collector, who would go from house to house to collect donations to prove that the peasants themselves had invited him. Then the commissar would come and organize 2 or 3 burnings at the stake. If someone was not ready to pay, he was suspected of being a sorcerer or a witch or sympathizer with the witches. In some cases, the villagers paid a sum to the commissar in advance so that he would not visit their village. This happened in the Eiffel village of Rickmuck. But 5 years later, the same commissar had come back, and since the peasants were not ready to yield a second time to this blackmail, he added more death sentences to the record of 800 he had already achieved.
It's a nice village you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened
right?
to it.
This is like mob tactic.
Yeah.
would have happened to the people
One-
in there.
Oh,
Like they
jeez.
I know, like they weren't even hiding it. Like really, when it's in the records,
No.
they're not hiding
Yeah.
what they're doing. Yeah.
It's almost like they didn't think anybody was gonna catch them or something because no one gave a fuck.
Yeah, or they couldn't. Most poor people couldn't read.
Oh yeah.
Right. That was probably a lot to do. They didn't think that there would be a class of people that could read that were also poor.
Yeah.
So it didn't
Yeah.
matter if they had records of it, right?
Yeah. I just and they're just they gotta all be psychos, right? They just don't give a fuck at the end of the day. Like
Oh yeah. Well, no, they were just accumulating the capital. They're like, "Oh, this is a nice business boom,"
yeah,
right?
because like if you actually gave a shit, you'd know that that record existed. I don't know,
Yeah.
and it would still bother you even if it was never going to be seen by anybody. You know?
It would should bother you just in a conscious matter that what you're doing, like you.
Right? Yeah. If you
Right?
had a conscience, like, oh my god,
Yeah. Crazy. Eh?
Ruthless people are a scourge.
Yeah, they are. Capital accumulator. That's what capital does, right?
Yeah.
Money. Really. It's parasitic. It is parasitic. And you can see it all through history. It's parasitic. It's just like
Yeah.
mob style tactics now, right? Yeah.
Right, and when
Okay.
you try and be, oh, I'm going to be smart and take it to its logical conclusion and get there before anybody else, and turns you into a fucking psycho.
Yeah, because you have to, because it's parasitic. Like that's all it is, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the people
yeah.
obviously are parasitic and psychopathic because that's all they know.
If you'll allow me to be poetic for a moment, I think it destroys the human spirit. You know.
Oh yeah, it destroys like the human condition. Yeah, it makes you into like parasite.
Less than human.
Not a part of humanity, but a parasite of humanity.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm saying this as I'm watching my kids play in the ocean, so
At least they're
it's
not
hard to be
listening and
depressed.
scar them for life.
No, right? Yeah, but it's hard to be totally depressed and doom and gloom at the moment. But
Yeah.
I am loving it. Thank you so much. You
Yeah,
wanna
no
you can
worries.
go on now.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Whee!
The hope of financial gains can be seen as one of the main reasons why the witch hysteria spread and why hardly any people were acquitted. The witch hunt was business. This is clearly spelt out by Frederick von Spee, who finally had the courage in 1633 to write a book against the sordid practice. He notes, the lawyers, inquisitors, etc., use torture because they want to show that they are not superficial but responsible lawyers. They need many witches in order to prove that their job is necessary. They do not want to lose their remuneration the princes have promised for each witch. To summarize, we can quote Cornelius Lewes, who said the witch trials were a new alchemy which made gold out of human blood. We could add, out of the female blood. The capital accumulated in the process of the witch hunt by the old ruling classes, as well as by the new rising bourgeois class, is nowhere mentioned in the estimates and calculations of the economic historians of that epoch. The blood money of the witch hunt was used for the private enrichment of bankrupt princes, of lawyers, doctors, judges, and professors, but also for such public affairs as financing wars, building up a bureaucracy, infrastructural measures, and finally the new absolute state. This blood money fed the original process of capital accumulation, perhaps not to the same extent as the plunder and robbery of the colonies, but certainly to a much greater extent than is known today. Oh shit. Hold on. Just give me 2 seconds. I gotta go plug this in because my phone's gonna die. Stupid phone. Okay. And I need something like that to stand on. Okay. Does that work? That works. Okay. Turn it. Okay, good. All right, as we were. You still there? You still there, right? Hello? Okay, good. Where was I? Okay. But the persecution and torture of witches was not only motivated by economic considerations. The interrogation of witches also provided the model for the development of the new scientific method of extracting secrets from Mother Nature. Caroline Merchant has shown that Francis Bacon, the father of modern science, the founder of the inductive method, used the same methods, the same ideology to examine nature, which the witch persecutions used to extract the secrets from the witches, namely torture, destruction, violence. He deliberately used the imagery of the witch hunt to describe his new scientific method. He treated nature as a female to be tortured through mechanical inventions, as the witches were tortured by new machines. He stated that the method by which nature's secrets might be discovered consisted in investigating the secrets of witchcraft by inquisition. Quote, "For you have but to follow, and as it were, hound out nature in her wanderings, and you will be able when you like to lead and drive her afterward to the same place again." Unquote. He strongly advocated the breaking of all taboos, which, in medieval society, forbade the digging of holes into Mother Earth or violating her. Quote, "Neither ought a man to make scruple of entering and penetrating into these holes and corners when the inquisition of truth is his whole object." End quote. He compared the inquisition of nature to the interrogation of witches and to that of the courtroom witnesses. Quote, "I mean, according to the practice in civil causes, in this great plea or suit granted by the divine favor and providence, whereby the human race seeks to recover its right over nature, to examine nature herself and the arts upon interrogatories." End quote. Nature will not yield her secrets unless forcibly violated by the new mechanical devices. Quote, "For like as a man's disposition is never well known, or proved till he be crossed, nor protest ever changed shapes till he was straightened and held fast, so nature exhibits herself more clearly under the trials and vexations of art, or mechanical devices, than when left to herself." End quote. According to Bacon, nature must be bound into service, made a slave, put in constraint, had to be dissected, much as women's wombs had symbolically yielded to the forceps. So nature's womb harbored secrets that through technology could be wrestled from her grasp for use in the improvement of the human condition. Bacon's scientific method, which is still the foundation of modern science, unified knowledge with material power.
Yeah, but like, holy shit, I can't believe you just came right out and said that.
Yeah, these people do. They did.
Wow. Because,
These are
like, I mean, I almost
quotes.
want to. Yeah, like we've almost been treating it as a metaphor, but
No, but these are his direct quotes. Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ah. Well, I already didn't like that guy, so okay.
Yeah, no, neither do I. Neither. Bacon's scientific method, which is still the foundation of modern science, unified knowledge with material power. Many of the technological inventions were in fact related to warfare and conquest, like gunpowder, navigation, the magnet. These arts of war were combined with knowledge, like printing, violence. Therefore, it was the key word and key method by which
Wait, I'm sorry. Did we just qualify magnets as an art of war?
Yeah. It was made direct as like magnets, as in, yeah, this is the different metals actually came from, and now even navigation like GPS, that's all from the military.
No, yeah, I knew that, but like, man, holy shit, there's so many other applications for that stuff.
Yeah, I know there is, because they made it, right? And then they invented it for war, but then they used it in other, because it was already invented, right? But that's where,
right, but like, I feel like one could argue such things would be invented for other reasons.
Well, yeah, but who knows what we could invent if it's not based on war?
Yeah. I just
That's what I usually think when I think of these things. And if everything wasn't focused on it being like invention to try to for war, like in war aims, if we just did it for for like this, like not necessity, but you know what I mean, like for actual human,
for human needs.
for human, humanity as a whole, instead of just focusing on war. Imagine what we could have invented. We don't even know.
Right.
We don't know.
It's like necessity is the mother of
Versus
invention,
war.
not
Yeah, not for
yeah.
anything that will on the humanity as a whole. It's always been because of war first. So that's crazy
Oh
to
my
think of.
god. Because
Yeah.
they won't stop.
Yeah, I know.
Freaking warring,
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
That's good. These arts of war were combined with knowledge, like printing. Violence, therefore, was the key word and key method by which the new man established his domination over women and nature. These means of coercion do not, like the old, merely exert a gentle guidance over nature's course. They have the power to conquer and subdue her, to shake her to the foundations. Thus, it concludes Carolyn Merchant. This is what she says, quote, the interrogation of witches as symbol for the interrogation of nature, the courtroom as model for its inquisition, and torture through mechanical devices as a tool for the subjugation of disorder were fundamental to the scientific method as power, end quote. The class which benefited from this new scientific patriarchal dominance over women and nature was the rising Protestant, capitalist class of merchants, mining industries, other clothier capitalists. For this class, it was necessary that the old autonomy of women over their sexuality and reproductive capacities be destroyed, and that women be forcibly made to breed more workers. Similarly, nature had to be transformed into a vast reservoir of material resources to be exploited and turned into profit by this class. Hence, the church, the state, the new capitalist class, and modern scientists collaborated in the violent subjugation of women and nature. The weak Victorian women of the 19th century were the products of the terror methods by which this class had modeled and shaped female nature according to its interests. All right, next subchapter. Colonization and a primitive accumulation of capital. The period referred to so far has been called the period of primitive accumulation of capital, before the capitalist mode of production could establish and maintain itself as a process of extended reproduction of capital, driven by the motor of surplus value production. Enough capital had to be accumulated to start this process. The capital was largely accumulated in the colonies between the 16th and 17th centuries. Most of this capital was not accumulated through honest trade by merchant capitalists, but largely by way of brigandage, piracy, forced and slave labor. Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, English merchants went out to break the Venetian monopoly of the spice trade with the East. Most of the Spanish-Portuguese discoveries were inspired by the motive to find an independent sea route to the Orient. In Europe, the result was a price revolution or inflation due to 1. The technical invention of separating copper from silver, 2. The plundering of Cusco and the use of slave labor. The cost of precious metal fell. This led to the ruination of the already exhausted feudal class and of the wage-earning craftsmen. Mendel concludes, quote, the fall in real wages, particularly marked by the substitution of cheap potatoes for bread as the basic food of the people, became one of the main sources of the primitive accumulation of industrial capital between the 16th and 18th century, end quote. One could say that the first phase of the primitive accumulation was that of merchant and commercial capital ruthlessly plundering and exploiting the colonies, human and natural wealth. Thus, there had been a marked shortage of capital in England about 1550. Quote, within a few years, the pirate expeditions against the Spanish fleet, all of which were organized in the form of joint stock companies, changed the situation. Drake's first pirate undertaking in the years 1577 to 1580 was launched with a capital of £5,000. It brought in about £600,000 profit, half of which went to the Queen. Beard estimates that the pirates introduced some £12 million into England during the reign of Elizabeth, end quote. The story of the Spanish conquistadors who depopulated regions like Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua completely and exterminated about 50 million Indians is well known. Also, Vasco da Gama's second arrival in India in 1502 and 1503 was marked by the same trial of blood. Quote, "It was a kind of crusade by merchants of pepper, cloves, and cinnamon. It was punctuated by horrible atrocities. Everything seemed permissible against the hated Muslims, whom the Portuguese were surprised to meet again at the other end of the world." Quote, end quote. The Portuguese, the English, the Dutch. Quote, "It is therefore not to be wondered that the Dutch merchants, whose profits depended on their monopoly of spices obtained through conquests in the Indonesian archipelago, went over to mass destruction of cinnamon trees in the small islands off the Moluccas as soon as prices began to fall in Europe. The Hongi voyages to destroy these trees and massacre the population, which for centuries had drawn their livelihood from growing them, set a sinister mark on the history of Dutch colonization, which had indeed begun in the same style. Admiral J.P. Cohen did not shrink from the extermination of all the male inhabitants of the Banda Islands." End quote. The trading companies, the Oost-Indische Company, the English East India Company, the Hudson Bay Company, that came to Canada, Hudson Bay, and the French Compagnie des Indes Orientales all combined the spice trade with the slave trade. Quote, "Between 1636 and 1645, the Dutch West India Company sold 23,000 Negroes for 6.7 million florins in all, or about 300 florins a head, whereas the goods given in exchange for each slave were worth no more than 50 florins. Between 1728 and 1760, ships sailing from Le Havre transported to the Antilles 203,000 slaves brought in Singal on the Gold Coast at Loango, etc. The sale of these slaves brought in 203 million livres. From 1783 to 1793, the slavers of Liverpool sold 300,000 slaves for 15 million, which went into the foundation of industrial enterprises." End quote. Mendel and others who have analyzed this period do not say much about how the colonizing process affected women in the newly established Portuguese, Dutch, English, and French colonies in Africa, Asia, and Latin and Central America. As the merchant capitalists depended mainly on brute force, outright robbery, and looting, we can assume that the women were also victims of this process. The recent work done by feminist scholars has shed more light onto these hidden sides of the civilizing process. Rhoda Reddock's work on women and slavery in the Caribbean shows clearly that the colonizers used a diametrically opposed value system versus the women of the subjugated peoples as that versus their own women. Slave women in the Caribbean for long periods were not allowed to marry or to have children. It was cheaper to import slaves than to pay for the reproduction of slave labor. At the same time, the bourgeois class domesticated its own women into pure monogamous breeders of their heirs, excluded them from work outside their house and from property. The whole brutal onslaught of the peoples of Africa, Asia, and America by European merchant capitalists was justified as a civilizing mission of the Christian nations. Here we see the connection between the civilizing process by which poor European women were persecuted and disciplined during the witch hunt, and the civilizing of the barbarian peoples in the colonies. Both are defined as uncontrolled, dangerous, savage nature, and both have to be subdued by force and tortured to break their resistance to robbery, expropriation, and exploitation. Then we get to women under colonialism. As Rhoda Reddock in 1984 has shown, the colonizers' attitude to slavery and slave women in the Caribbean was based clearly on capitalist cost-benefit calculations. This was particularly true with regard to the question whether slave women should be allowed to breed more slaves or not. Throughout the centuries of the modern slave trade and slave economy from 1655 to 1838, this question was answered not according to the principles of Christian ethics, supposedly applicable in the motherland, but according to the accumulation considerations of the capitalist planters. Thus, during the first period from 1655 to the beginnings of the 18th century, when most estates were small holdings with few slaves, these planters still depended, following the peasant model of reproduction, on the natural reproduction of the slave population. The second period is characterized by the so-called sugar revolution, the introduction of large-scale sugar production in big plantations. In this period, beginning around 1760 and lasting till about 1800, slave women were actively discouraged from bearing children or forming families. The planters, as good capitalists, held the view that it was cheaper to purchase than to breed. This was the case in all sugar colonies, whether they were under Catholic, which is French, or Protestant, which is British Dutch domination. In fact, slave women who were found pregnant were cursed and ill-treated. Moreover, the backbreaking work in the sugar plantations did not allow the slave women to nurse small babies. The reason behind this antinatalist policy of the planters are expressed in the statement of one Mr. G.M. Hall on Cuban planters. Quote, during and after pregnancy, the slave is useless for several months, and her nourishment should be more abundant and better chosen. This loss of work and added expense comes out of the master's pocket. It is he who has to pay for the often lengthy care of the newborn. This expense is so considerable that the Negro born on the plantation costs more when he is in condition to work than another of the same age brought in at the public market would have cost. End quote. Lovely. In the French colony of Saint Dominique, the planters calculated that a slave woman's work over a period of 18 months was worth 600 livres. The 18 months were the time calculated for pregnancy and breastfeeding. During such a time, the slave woman would be able to do only half of her usual work. Thus, her master would lose 300 livres. Quote, a 15-month-old slave was not worth this sum, end quote. The effect of this policy was, as many observers have found, that the fertility of slave women was extremely low during this period and far into the 19th century. Towards the end of the 18th century, it became evident that Western Africa could no longer be counted upon as fertile hunting ground for slaves. Moreover, the British colonizers saw it as more profitable to incorporate Africa itself into their empire as a source of raw material and minerals. Therefore, the more progressive sections of the British bourgeoisie advocated the abolition of the slave trade, which happened in 1807, and the encouragement of local breeding. The colonial governments foresaw a number of incentives in slave codes of the late 18th and 19th centuries to encourage local breeding of slaves by slave women on the plantations. This sudden change of policy, however, seems to have had little effect on the slave women. As Rhoda Reddick points out, in the long years of slavery, the slave woman had internalized an anti-motherhood attitude as a form of resistance to the slave system. They continued a kind of birth strike till about the middle of the 19th century. When they became pregnant, they used bitter herbs to produce abortions. Or, when the children were born, many were allowed to die out of the woman's natural dislike for bearing them, to see them become slaves, destined to toil all their lives for their master's enrichment. Rhoda Reddick sees in this...
Dare I say that sounds familiar? Like,
yeah.
First of all, them some bad bitches. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Smash the patriarchy. Use your power. Hell yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course they didn't want their fucking children to be born to this. Like,
yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be pretty fucking demented to be like, yeah, I'll have more children. Like,
and that sounds like women. Those are people. Those are women, you know. Yeah. It's not like some historical, like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, you know, like.
No, there's reasons. And this is the same thing with the indigenous women, right? They killed their own kids when they were like in the Caribbean, something like that, the indigenous there, because they're like, no, like, we don't want kids in this.
Right, no, and it's just so many people are kind of like making a similar calculation like right now.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just all over.
It all comes back around.
Yeah.
Okay, where was I?
Oh boy.
Rhoda Reddick sees in this anti-motherhood attitude of the slave woman as an example of the way in which the ideology of the ruling classes could, for different though connected material reasons, become the accepted ideology of the oppressed. The colonial masters now reap the fruits, or rather the failures, of treating African women as mere conditions of production for capital accumulation. The problem of labor shortage on the plantations in the Caribbean became so acute. See, the Caribbean, like I said, yeah. Due to the slave women's birth strike, that in Cuba, virtual stud farms were established, and slave breeding became a regular business. And Rhoda Reddick summarizes the changing policy of the colonizers regarding slave women's procreative capacities in the following manner. Yeah, stud farms. like cattle, like literal cattle, stud farms. Disgusting, right? Okay. Quote, as long as Africa was incorporated in the capitalist world economy only as a producer of human labor, there was no need to produce labor locally. Through the use of cost-benefit analysis, the planters had taken the most profitable line of action. When this was no longer profitable for them, they were surprised by the resistance shown by the slave women who recognized clearly their position as the property of the plantation owners. The fact is that for more than 100 years, the majority of slave women in the Caribbean were neither wives nor mothers, and by exercising control over their reproductive capacities or capabilities, were able to deeply affect the plantation economy. These more than 100 years that slave women in the Caribbean were neither wives nor mothers, whereas exactly the same period that women of the European bourgeoisie were domesticated and ideologically manipulated into wifehood and motherhood as their natural vocation. While one set of women was treated as pure labor force, a source of energy, the other set of women was treated as non-productive breeders only. It is indeed an irony of history that later in the 19th century, the colonizers tried desperately to introduce the nuclear family and the monogamous marriage norm into the ex-slave population of the Caribbean. But both women and men saw no benefit for themselves in adopting these norms and rejected marriage. Now their own double-faced policy boomeranged on the colonizers. In order to be able freely to exploit the slaves, they had for centuries defined them outside humanity and Christianity. In this, they were supported by the ethnologists who said that the Negroes did not belong to the same species as the Europeans. Hence, slaves could not become Christians because, according to the Church of England, no Christian could be a slave. When around 1780, the new slave codes began to encourage marriage among the slaves as a means to encourage local breeding of slaves, the slaves only ridiculed this high caste thing and continued with their common law unions. This meant that each woman could live with a man as long as she pleased. The same also applied to the man. Slave women saw the marriage tie as something that would subject them to the control of one man, who could even beat them. The men wanted more than one wife and therefore rejected marriage. The missionaries and planters who tried to introduce the European middle class model of the man woman relationship were exasperated. A church historian, Caldecott, even eventually found an explanation for this resistance to the benefits of civilization in the fact that Negroes were not able to control their fancy or their sexual desires, and therefore shrank from constancy. Quote, with them, it is the women as much as the men who are thus constituted. There is in the Negro race a nearer approach to equality between the sexes than is found in the European races. End quote. Quoted by Reddock in 1984. Another quote. Equality between the sexes, however, was seen as a sign of a primitive backward race, a notion which was common among 19th century's colonizers and ethnologists. That was Reddock who quoted that one. So that equality of men and women is a sign of backwardness, and that it is a part of the civilizing mission of the British colonists to destroy the independence of colonized women and to teach the colonized men the virtues of sexism and militarism are also clearly spelt out by one Mr. Fielding Hall in his book, A People at School. Mr. Hall was political officer in the British colonial administration in Burma between 1887 to 1891. He gives a vivid account of the independence of Burmese women, of the equality between the sexes, and of the peace-loving nature of the Burmese people, which he ascribes to Buddhism. But instead of trying to preserve such a happy society, Mr. Hall comes to the conclusion that Burma has to be brought by force on the road of progress. Quote, but today the laws are ours, the power, the authority. We govern for our own subjects and we govern in our own way. Our whole presence here is against their desires, unquote. He suggests the following measures to civilize the Burmese people. 1. The men must be taught to kill and to fight for the British colonialists. I can imagine nothing that could do the Burmese so much good as to have a regiment of their own to distinguish itself in our wars. It would open their eyes to new views of life. And 2, the women must surrender their liberty in the interests of man. End quote. Considering the equality of the sexes a sign of backwardness, This colonial administrator warned, quote, "It must never be forgotten that their civilization is relatively 1,000 years behind ours," quote, end quote. To overcome this backwardness, the Burmese men should learn to kill, to make war, and to oppose their women. In the words of Mr. Hall, quote, "What the surgeon's knife is to the diseased body, that is the soldier's sword to the diseased nations." Oh, that's a nice quote. And again, quote, "The gospel of progress, of knowledge, of happiness is taught not by book and sermon, but by spear and sword, to declare, as Buddhism does, that bravery is of no account, to say to them, as the women did, you are no better and no more than we are, and should have the same code of life. Could anything be worse?" End quote. Fucking guy. He also seeks the help of ethnologists to defend this ideology of man the hunter. Quote, "Men and women are not sufficiently differentiated yet in Burma. It is the mark of a young race. Ethnologists tell us that in the earliest peoples, the difference was very slight. As a race grows older, the differences increase." End quote. Then Mr. Hall describes how Burmese women are eventually brought down to the status of the civilized, dependent housewife. Local home industries, formerly in the hands of women, are destroyed by
Holy shit.
are destroyed by the import of commodities from England. Women are also pushed out of trade. Quote, "In Rangoon, the large English stores are undermining the bazaars where the women used to earn an independent livelihood." End quote. After their loss of economic independence, what?
What?
Sorry, I couldn't hear. I thought that was you at first.
No.
Okay.
She's watching something. I had it muted because of the wind and everything, but like it's around the corner, so then I can't get to it in time to say anything.
No, that's okay. Okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
After the loss of economic independence, Mr. Hall considers it of utmost importance that the laws of marriage and inheritance be changed so that Burma, too, may become a progressive land where men rule. Women has to understand that her independence stands in the way of progress. and another quote for him, right from his book, People at School. Quote,
Woman has to understand that her independence stands in the way of progress. Wow.
Another quote.
Yeah, they're just saying the quiet part loud. Like,
right? Quote,
wow.
"With her power of independence will disappear her free will and her influence. When she is dependent on her husband, she can no longer dictate to him. When he feeds her, she is no longer able to make her voice as loud as his is. It is inevitable that she should retire. The nations who succeed are not feminine nations, but the masculine. Women's influence is good provided it does not go too far. Yet it has done so here. It has been bad for the man, bad too for the woman. It has never been good for women to be too independent. It has robbed them of many virtues. It improves a man to have to work for his wife and family. It makes a man of him. It is demoralizing for both if the woman can keep herself and, if necessary, her husband too." End quote.
Demoralizing, huh? Wow. I mean, it makes you like those savage races, right? I love that. How when everybody's equal, that's very convenient.
Yeah.
How equality is seen as savage. Like, what?
I know some of the fucking quotes here are just brilliant. Like, you're like, oh, okay.
Imagine being as self-assured as an 18th century Englishman. Holy shit.
Right?
I mean, when was this guy writing? Probably the 19th century.
Let me see again.
Because I guess we're having a quote from a book from the 80s.
1887 to 1891.
Yeah.
This is when it's being, yeah.
Yeah. Imagine being as self-assured as an Englishman in the 19th century. Like, wow.
Okay. That the African women brought to the Caribbean slaves were not made slaves because they were backward or less civilized than the colonizers, but on the contrary, were made savages by slavery itself, and those colonizers is now brought to light by historical research on women in Western Africa. George Brooks, for example, shows in his work on the Signers, the women traders of 18th century Senegal, that these women, particularly of the Wolof tribe, held a high position in the pre-colonial West African societies. Moreover, the first Portuguese and French merchants who came to Senegal in search of merchandise were totally dependent on the cooperation and goodwill of these powerful women, who entered into sexual and trade alliances with these European men. They not only were in possession of great wealth accumulated through trade with the inferior parts of the region, but had also developed such a cultured way of life, such a sense for beauty and gracefulness, that the European adventurers who first came into contact with them felt flabbergasted. Brooks quotes one Reverend John Lindsay, chaplain aboard a British ship, as having written, quote, "As to their women, and in particular the ladies, for so I must call many of those in Senegal, they are in a surprising degree handsome, have very fine features, are wonderfully tractable, remarkably polite both in conversation and manners, and in the point of keeping themselves neat and clean, of which we have generally strange ideas, formed to us by the beastly laziness of the slaves. They far surpass the Europeans in every respect. They bathe twice a day, and in this particular have a hearty contempt for all white people, who they imagine must be disagreeable, to our women especially. Nor can their men, from this very notion, be brought to look upon the prettiest of our women, but with the coldest indifference, some of whom there are here officers' ladies, who dress very showy, and who, even in England, would be thought handsome." End quote. The European men, the Portuguese and French who came to West Africa first as merchants or soldiers, came usually alone, without wives or families. Their alliances with these ladies or seigneurs, from the Portuguese word senhoras, were so attracted to them that they married these women according to the Wolof style, and often simply adopted the African way of life. Their children, the Euro-Africans, often rose to high positions in the colonial society. Their daughters usually became seigneurs again. Obviously, the Portuguese and the French colonizers did not yet have strong racist prejudices against sexual and marriage relationships with West African women, but found these alliances not only profitable, but also humanly satisfying. With the advent of the British in West Africa, however, this easygoing Catholic attitude towards African women changed. The British soldiers, merchants, and administrators no longer entered into marriage alliances with these seigneurs, but turned African women into prostitutes. This then seems to be the point in history when racism proper enters the picture. The African woman is degraded and made a prostitute for the English colonizers. Then theories of the racial superiority of the white male and the beastliness of the African woman are propagated. Obviously, British colonial history is as discreet about these aspects as the Dutch. Yet Brooks says that the institution of signorship did not take root in Gambia because it was, quote, stifled by the influx of new arrivals from Britain, few of whom, whether traders, government officials, or military officers, deviated from proper British behavior to live openly with Euro-African or African women, whatever they might do clandestinely. British authors are discreet about such matters, but it can be discerned that in contrast to the family lives of traders and their seigneurs, there developed a rootless bachelor community of a type found elsewhere in British areas of West Africa. Open and unrepentant racism was one characteristic of this community. Two others were reckless gambling and alcoholism, which was written in 1976 by Brooks. These accounts corroborate not only Walter Rodney's general thesis that Europe underdeveloped Africa, but also our main argument that the colonial process as it advanced brought the women of the colonized people progressively down from a former high position of relative power and independence to that of beastly and degraded nature. This naturalization of colonized women is the counterpart of the civilizing of the European women. The defining back into nature, or the naturalization of African women who were brought as slaves to the Caribbean, is perhaps the clearest evidence of the double-faced hypocritical process of European colonization. While African women were treated as savages, the women of the white colonizers in their farther lands rose to the status of quote-unquote ladies. These two processes did not happen side by side, are not simply historical parallels, but are intrinsically and casually linked within this patriarchal capitalist mode of production. This creation of savage and civilized women and the polarization between the two was, and still is, the organizing structural principle also in other parts of the world subjected by capitalist colonization. There is not yet enough historical research into the effects of the colonizing process on women, but the little evidence we have corroborates this observation. It also explains the shifts in colonial policy towards women, following the fluctuations of the accumulation process, which Rhoda Reddick observed. Thus, Annie Stoller in 1982 has found that at the other end of the globe in Sumatra in the early 20th century, the Dutch followed a similar double-faced policy regarding women. Quote, at certain junctions in estate expansion, for example, women ostensibly recruited from Java as estate coolies were in large part brought to Sumatra to service the domestic, including sexual needs of unmarried male workers and management. Prostitution was not only sanctioned but encouraged, end quote. The driving motive for these planters, as was the case with the French or English in the Caribbean, was profit making, and this motive, as Annie Stoller remarks, explains the fluctuations in Dutch colonial policy versus women. In the colonial records, the issues of marriage, contracts, sickness, prostitution, and labor unrest appear as they relate to profit. Married workers during the first decade of the century were considered too costly, and therefore marriage contracts were difficult to obtain. Obviously, to make women prostitutes was cheaper, but then, when almost half of the female workers in North Sumatra were racked with venereal disease and had to be hospitalized at the company's expense, it became more profitable to encourage marriage among the estate workers. This was between the
It's
1920s.
funny how this shit always ends up turning on them, biting them in the ass.
Yeah, because this is like in the 1900s. Like, yeah, this is right here. This was between the 1920s and 1930s. Whereas in the first phase, migrant women were good enough to do all hard labor on the plantations. Now a process of housewifeization took place to exclude resident women from wage labor on the estates. Annie Stoller writes, quote, at different economic and political junctures in plantation history, the planters contended that 1. Permanent female workers were too costly to maintain because of the time they took off for childbirth and menstruation. 2. Women should not and could not do hard labor. And 3. Women were better suited to casual work. That this introduction of the image of the weak woman was a clear ideological move, which served the economic purpose of lowering women's wages and creating a casual female labor force, becomes evident from the statistics. Thus, in the Coolie Budget Report of 1903, it is stated that only 1% of total available working days were missed because of pregnancy. Rhoda Reddick also, in the later parts of her study, gives ample evidence of this process around the same time in the British Crown colony of Trinidad, of excluding women from wage labor proper and defining them as dependents. Also, in this case of the Dutch colonizers, profit making was the overall objective, and the contradictory values and policies regarding their own civilized women back home and the savage women in Sumatra constituted the best mechanism to ensure this. The fact that they used two diametrically opposed sets of values to the two sets of women obviously did not give them any pangs of conscience. Prostitution became a public issue only when it was no longer profitable to recruit women as prostitutes. Again, here we have to stress that the emergence of the Dutch housewife, the stress on family and homemaking back home, was not just a temporal coincidence, but was casually linked to the disruption of families and homes among estate workers in the Dutch colonies. And women under German colonialism, which is, yeah, so we're almost there at the end. Whereas the examples of British and Dutch colonial policy regarding women given previously mainly focus on the colonial size of the picture, the following example, based on Martha Mamazoa's study in the impact of German colonialism on women, includes the effect of this process also on the German women back home. This account will therefore help us to perceive more fully the double-faced process of colonization and housewifeization. Germany entered the race for the looting and distribution of the world rather late. The German Colonial Society was founded in 1884, and from then until the beginning of World War I, a direct result of the inter-imperialist scramble for hegemony among the European nations. The government of the German Reich encouraged the establishment of German colonies, particularly in Africa. Mamazea's study shows that colonization did not affect men and women in the same way, but used the particular capitalist sexual division of labor to bring the labor power of Africans under the command of capital and the white man. As usually happens with conquerors, invaders, and colonizers, the Germans who first came to West Africa as planters around the 1880s came mostly as single men. As had happened with the Portuguese and French men in West Africa, they entered into sexual and matrimonial relations with African women. Many formed regular families with these women. After some time, it became evident that these marriages would eventually lead to a new generation of quote unquote mixed blood Euro Africans who, following the patriarchal and bourgeois family laws in Germany, would be Germans with full economic and political rights. There were heated debates about the colonial question or the native question in the German Reichstag, which centered on the one hand on the question of mixed marriages and bastards. Hence, on this concern for the privileges of the white race, on the other, on the production, subjugation, and disciplining of sufficient African labor power for the German estates and projects. Governor Friedrich von Lindquist expressed the bastard question in Southwest Africa in the following manner. Quote, the considerable preponderance of the white male over the white female population is a sorry state of affairs, which for the life and the future of the country will be of great significance. This has led to a considerable number of mixed relations, which is particularly regrettable, because apart from the ill effects of the mixing of races, the white minority in South Africa can preserve its dominance over the coloreds only by keeping its race pure, end quote. Love it, right? Jesus Christ. Therefore, in 1905, a law was passed which prohibited marriages between European men and African
Like I'm
women.
I live in Tennessee. They sound like Americans.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Nazis came out of Germany, so I mean, they
You're
were
breaking up.
really,
What?
they were really concerned with the mixing of races and all that shit. So,
Oh, in America?
no, in Germany.
Oh, yeah, true. True. But it's just these African settlers. That panic of like, oh, wait,
Right?
we're
Yeah.
just not
And
quite racist
this is
enough.
also in Europe. I mean, people act like it's not, but it is. Like,
Oh, I bet.
where was I?
It just sounds so familiar.
Yeah, right. It does. Okay, where was I? Oh, yeah. Okay. In 1907, even those marriages which had been concluded prior to this law were declared null and void. Those who lived in such unions, including their bastards, lost the rights of citizens in 1908, including the voting right. The objective of this law was clearly the preservation of property rights in the hands of the white minority. Had the Afro-Germans had the rights of German citizens and voting rights, they could, in the course of time, have outnumbered the pure whites in the elections. The laws, however, prohibiting marriages between European men and black women did not mean that the Reichstag wanted to put restrictions on the sexual freedom of the colonizing men. On the contrary, the German men were even advised by doctors to recruit African women as concubines or prostitutes. Thus, one Dr. Max Butcher, representative of the German Reich, wrote, quote, regarding the free intercourse with the daughters of the land, this has to be seen as advantageous rather than as damaging to health. Even under the dark skin, the eternal female is an excellent fetish against emotional deprivation, which so easily occurs in the African loneliness. Apart from these psychological gains, there are also practical advantages of personal security. To have an intimate black girlfriend means protection from many dangers. Quote. What the fuck? What does fuck mean, man? These people. This means black women were good enough
Wait,
to
what?
service the white men as prostitutes and concubines, but they should not become proper wives because this would, in the long run, have changed the property relations to in Africa. This becomes very clear in the statement of one Dr. Carl matter of course, but may be stressed again that every European man who has intercourse with black females has to take care that such a union remains sterile in order to prevent a mixture of races. Such a mixture would have the worst effect for our colonies, as this has been amply proved by the West Indies, Brazil, and Madagascar. Such relationships can and should only be considered as surrogates for marriage. Recognition and protection by the state, which marriages among whites enjoy, have to be withheld from such unions, end quote. Like they just say it. Here, the double standard is very clear. Marriage and family were goods to be protected for the whites, the master men, or dominant men. African families could be disrupted. Men and women could be forced into labor gangs women could be made prostitutes. It is important.
Well, at least we don't have to worry about like revisionists being like, no, they didn't mean it.
Well, I mean,
like, yes, they
they'll
did.
still say that.
Right, but yes, they did. Like, I'm never gonna, only an idiot would believe that.
Right?
Wow. Or racist, I guess.
Okay, let's see. It is important not to look at this hypocritical colonial policy towards women only from a moralistic point of view. It is essential to understand that the rise and generalization of the decent bourgeois marriage and family as protected institutions are casually linked to the disruption of clan and family relations of the natives. The emergence of the masses of German families from proletarian misery, as one colonial officer put it, was directly linked to the exploitation of colonies and the subordination of colonial labor power. The development of Germany into a leading industrial nation was dependent, as many saw it in those years, on the possession of colonies. Thus, Paul von Hindenburg, the later Rechenstälzer, wrote, quote, without colonies, no security regarding the acquisition of raw materials. Without raw materials, no industry. Without industry, no adequate standard of living and wealth. Therefore, Germans we need colonies, end quote. Sorry, I'm just going to shut the window because someone's out there. Okay, I'm back. The justification for this logic of exploitation was provided by the theory that natives had not yet evolved to the level of the white master race, and that colonialism was a means to develop the slumbering forces of production in these regions and thus make them contribute to the betterment of mankind. A colonial officer from Southwest Africa wrote, quote, a right of the natives, which could only be realized at the expense of the development of the white race, does not exist. The idea is absurd that Bantus, Sudan Negroes, and Hottentots in Africa have the right to live and die as they please, even when by this uncounted people among the civilized people of Europe were forced to remain tied to a miserable proletarian existence instead of being able, by the full use of the productive capacities of our colonial possessions, to rise to a better, richer level of existence themselves, and also to help construct the whole body of human and national welfare, end quote. The conviction that the white master men had the God-given mission to develop the productive capacities in the colonies and thus bring the savages into the orbit of civilization was also shared, as we shall see later, by the social democrats who likewise believed in the development of productive forces through colonialism. The refusal of the native women of Southwest Africa to produce children for the hated colonial masters was, therefore, seen as an attack on this policy of development of productive forces. After the rebellion of the Herero people had been brutally crushed by the German general von Trotha, the Herero women went on a virtual birth strike. Like the slave women in the Caribbean, they refused to produce forced labor power for the planters and estate owners. Between 1892 and 1909, the Herero population decreased from 80,000 to a mere 19,962. For the German farmers, this was a severe problem. One of them wrote, quote, after the rebellion, the native, particularly the Herero, often takes the stand not to produce children. He considers himself a prisoner, which he brings to your notice at every job which he does not like. He does not like to make new labor force for his oppressor, who has deprived him of his golden laziness. While the German farmers have been trying for years to remedy this sad state of affairs by offering a premium for each child born on the farm, for instance, a she-goat, but mostly in vain. A section of today's native women has been engaged for too long in prostitution and are spoiled for motherhood. Another part does not want children and gets rid of them when they are pregnant through abortion. In such cases, the authorities should interfere with all severity. Each case should be investigated thoroughly and severely punished by prison, and if that is not enough, by putting the culprit in chains, end quote. Jesus. In a number of cases, the farmers took the law into their own hands and brutally punished the recalcitrant women. In the Herero women's stand, we see, again, as in the case of the slave women, that African women were not just helpless victims in this colonizing process. but understood precisely their relative power within the colonial relations of production, and used that power accordingly. What has to be noted, however, with regard to the comments of the German farmer quoted previously, is that although it was the Herero woman who went on a birth strike, he refers only to the Herero man. I noticed that too, actually. Even in their reporting, the colonizing men denied the subjected women all subjectivity and initiative. All natives were savages, wild nature, but the most savage of all were the native women. And just give me 1 second here. I'm just going to go quickly to the washroom if that's okay. I hope you can probably hear this, so I just have to take a tinkle.
And I had an alarm go off just then, so that's funny. That was good timing because you would have been interrupted anyway. So we're gonna look at this cool painting. Check out that cool painting. It looks like it's an actual painting too, and not like a print. You know. So we got to meet our landlord and landlady yesterday, actually, because they own a fishing boat, and we went to their shop to buy our supper. It was super cool, and obviously they, have some taste because they put up a real painting, not a printable painting. That would be so stupid. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, cute little cabin, right on the beach. What's not to like? You can hear all the
I'm back,
TVs and
I'm back.
everything. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
I was trying to hold it, but I couldn't wait. Okay.
Oh no, I'm just keeping it warm for you.
Okay. All right. So next subchapter: white women in Africa. Martha Mamose also provides us with interesting material about the other side of the colonizing process, namely the impact of the subordination of Africans, and the African women in particular, had on the German women back home and on those who had joined the colonial pioneers in Africa. As was said before, one of the problems of the white colonialists was the reproduction of the white master race in the colonies itself. This could be achieved only if white women from the fatherland were ready to go to the colonies, marry, quote, our boys down there, and produce white children. As most planters belonged to that band of adventurous bachelors, a special effort had to be made to mobilize women to go to the colonies as brides. The German advocates of white supremacy saw it as a special duty of German women to save the German men in the colonies from the evil influence of the Kaffir females, who in the long run would alienate these men from European culture and civilization. The call was heard by Frau Ada von Lilienkron, who founded the Women's League of the German Colonial Society. This association had the objective of giving girls a special training in colonial housekeeping and sending them as brides to Africa. She recruited mainly girls from the peasant or working class, many of whom had worked as maidservants in the cities. In 1898, for the first time, 25 single women were sent to Southwest Africa as a Christmas gift for our boys down there. Martha Mamazoe reports how many of these women rose to the level of the white Memsaheb, the bourgeois lady, who saw it as her mission to teach the African women the virtues of civilization, cleanliness, punctuality, obedience, and industriousness. It is amazing to observe how soon these women, who not long ago were still among the downtrodden themselves, shared the prejudices against the dirty and lazy natives which were common in colonial society. But not only did the few European women who went to the colonies as wives and breeders for race and nation rise to the level of proper housewives on the subordination and subjugation of the colonized women, so too did the women back home. First, those of the bourgeoisie, and later also the women of the proletariat, were gradually domesticated and civilized into proper housewives. For the same period which saw the expansion of colonialism and imperialism, also saw the rise of the housewife in Europe and the USA. In the following, I shall deal with this side of the story. And then the last subchapter, housewifeization, which is going to be a little bit of a long chapter, but then we're done. Okay. First stage, luxuries for the ladies. The other side of the story of both the violent subordination of European women during the witch persecution and of African, Asian, and Latin American women during the colonizing process is the creation of the women first of the accumulated classes in Europe, later also in the USA as consumers and demonstrators of luxury and wealth, and at a later stage as housewives. Let us not forget that practically all the items which were stolen, looted, or traded from the colonies were not items necessary for the daily subsistence of the masses, but luxury items. Initially, these items were only consumed by the privileged few who had the money to buy them. Spices from the Moluccan Islands, precious textiles, silk, precious stones, and muslin from India, sugar, cacao, and spices from the Caribbean, precious metals from Hispano-America. Werner Sombart, in his study on luxury and capital in 1922, has advanced the thesis that the market for most of these rare colonial luxury goods had been created by a class of women who had risen as mistresses of the absolutist princes, the kings of France and England in the 17th and 18th centuries. According to Sombart, the great cocottes and mistresses were the ones who created the new fashions of women's dress, cosmetics, eating habits, and particularly in furnishing the homes of the gentlemen. Neither the warmongering men of the aristocracy nor the men of the merchant class would have had, if left to themselves, the imagination, the sophistication, and the culture to invent such luxuries. Almost all centered around women as luxury creatures. It was this class of women, according to Sombart, who created the new luxury needs, which gave the decision impetus to capitalism because, with their access to the money accumulated by the absolute state, they created the market for early capitalism. Sombart gives us a detailed account of the development of luxury consumption at the Italian, French, and English courts of the 16th and 17th centuries. He clearly identifies a trend in luxury spending, particularly during the reign of Louis, whereas the luxury expenses of the King of France were 2,995 livres in 1542. These had steadily risen and were 28,813,955 in 1680. Sombart attributes this enormous display of luxury and splendor to the love of these feudal lords for their courtesans and mistresses. Thus, the king's fancy for La Belliere prompted Louis to build Versailles. Sombart is also of the opinion that Mime de Pompadour, the representative of the culture of the ancient regime, had a bigger budget than any of the European queens ever had. In 19 years of her reign, she spent 36,327,268 livres. Similarly, Comtesse du Barry, who reigned between 1769 to 1774, spent 12,481,803 livres on luxury items alone. Feminists will not agree with Sombart, who attributes this development of luxury, which first centered around the European courts and was later imitated by the nouveau riche among the European bourgeoisie, to the great courtesans with their great vanity, their addiction for luxurious clothes, houses, furniture, food, cosmetics. Even if the men of these classes preferred to demonstrate their wealth by spending on their women and turning them into showpieces of their accumulated wealth, it would again mean to make the women the villain of the piece. Would it not amount to saying that it was not the men who wielded economic and political power who were the historical subjects in the Marxist sense, but the women as the real power behind the scenes who pulled the strings and set the tune according to which the mighty men danced? But apart from this, Sombart's thesis that capitalism was born out of luxury consumption and not in order to satisfy growing subsistence needs of the masses has great relevance for our discussion of the relationship between colonization and housewifeization. He shows clearly that early merchant capitalism was based practically entirely on trade with luxury items from the colonies, which were consumed by the European elites. The items which appear in a trading list of the Levant trade include Oriental medicines such as aloes, balm, ginger, camphor, cardamom, myrobalm, saffron, etc., spices, pepper, cloves, sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, perfumes, benzoin, musk, sandalwood, incense, amber, dyes for textiles as, for example, indigo, lac, purple, henna, raw materials for textiles such as silk, Egyptian flax, precious metals and jewelry and stones, such as corals, pearls, ivory, porcelain, glass, gold, and silver, textiles, such as silk, brocade, velvet, fine material of linen, muslin, or wool. In the 18th and 19th centuries, many more items were added to this list, particularly items systematically produced in the new colonial plantations like sugar, coffee, cacao, and tea. Sombart gives an account of the rising tea consumption in England. The average tea consumption of an English family was 6.5 pounds in 1906. This level of consumption could be afforded in 1668 by 3 families, 1710 by 2,000 families, 1730 by 12,000 families, 1760 by 40,000 families, 1780 by 140,000 families. What did this tremendous deployment of luxury among the European rich, based on the exploitation of the peoples of Africa, Asia, and America, mean for the European women? Sombart identifies certain trends in the luxury production, which he, as we have seen, attributes to the passions of a certain class of women. They are the following. 1. A tendency towards domesticity. Whereas medieval luxury was public, now it became private. The display of luxury does not take place in the marketplace or during public festivals, but inside the secluded palaces and houses of the rich. 2. A tendency towards objectification. In the Middle Ages, wealth was expressed in the number of vassals or men a prince could count upon. Now wealth is expressed in goods and material items, commodities bought by money. Adam Smith would say one moves from unproductive to productive luxury because the former personal luxury puts unproductive hands to work, whereas the objectified luxury puts productive hands to work in a capitalist sense, that is, wage workers in a capitalist enterprise. Sombart is of the opinion that leisure class women had an interest in the development of objectified luxury, more items and commodities, because they had no use for more soldiers and vassals. Similar trends can be observed with regard to sugar and coffee. For most people in Europe in the 18th century, sugar had not yet replaced honey. Sugar remained a typical luxury item for the European rich until far into the 19th century. Foreign trade between Europe, America, Africa, and the Orient was, until well into the 19th century, mainly trade in the previously mentioned luxury goods. Imports from East India to France in 1776 were to the value of 36,241,000 francs, distributed as follows. And I'm not, hold on. I'm not reading all of the that part. This is it. See? This is in francs. Okay. Because that's going to be a little bit boring if I have to go through that.
100%. We get it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just don't want to say all those numbers and for every single one, but they do give a detailed account. So just so you know, there is evidence. It's detailed. I'm not saying it though, because it's just that would be boring. Sombart also includes the profits made by the slave trade in the figures for luxury production and consumption. The slave trade was totally organized along capitalist lines. The development of wholesale and retail markets in England followed the same logic from the 17th to the 19th century. The first big urban shops which came to replace the local markets were shops dealing with luxury goods. 3. A tendency towards contraction of time. Whereas formerly luxury consumption was restricted to certain seasons because of the indigenous production of a surplus needed a long time, now luxuries could be consumed at any time during the year and also within the span of an individual life. Sombart again attributes this tendency, in my opinion, wrongly, to the individualism and the impatience of leisure class women, who demanded immediate satisfaction of their desires as a sign of the affection of their lovers. Of course, he blames women for it. Of the previous tendencies, the tendency towards domestication and privatization certainly had a great impact on the construction of the new image of the good women in the centers of capitalism in the 19th and 20th centuries, namely women as mothers and housewife, and the family as her arena, the privatized arena of consumption and love, excluded and sheltered from the arena of production and accumulation, where men reign. In the following, I shall trace how the ideal of the domesticated, privatized woman concerned with love and consumption and dependent on male breadwinner was generalized first in the bourgeois class proper, then among the so-called petty bourgeoisie, and finally in the working class or the proletarian. So, second stage, housewife and nuclear family, the colony of the little white man. while the big white men, or the dominant men, appropriated land, natural resources, and people in Africa, Asia, and Central and South America in order to be able to extract raw materials, products, and labor power which they themselves had not produced. While they disrupted all social relations created by the local people, they began to build up in their fatherlands the patriarchal nuclear family. That is, the monogamous nuclear family as we know it today. This family, which was put under the specific protection of state, consists of the forced combination of the principles of kinship and cohabitation, and the definition of the man, the head of the household and breadwinner for the non-earning legal wife and their children. While in the 18th and while in the 18th and early 19th centuries, this marriage and family form were possible only among the property classes of the bourgeoisie. Among peasants, artisans, and workers, women had always to share all work. This form was made the norm for all by a number of legal reforms pushed through by the state from the second half of the 19th century onwards. In Germany, as in other European countries, there existed a number of marriage restrictions for people without property. These were only abolished in the second half of the 19th century when the state intervened to promote a pro-natalist policy for the propertyless working class. Recent family history has revealed that even the concept of family became popular only towards the end of the 18th century in Europe, particularly in France and England. And it was not before the middle of the 19th century that this concept was also adopted for the households of the workers and peasants because, contrary to general opinion, family had a distinct class connotation. Only classes with property could afford to have a family. Propertyless people like farm servants or urban poor were not supposed to have a family. But family, in the sense in which we understand it today, that is, as a combination of co-residence and blood relationship based on the patriarchal principle, was not even found among the aristocracy. The aristocratic family did not imply co-residence of all family members. Co-residence, particularly of husband and wife and their offspring, became the crucial criterion of the family of the bourgeoisie. Hence, our present concept of family is a bourgeois one.
Okay, I am confused about this though. Like the fact that the lower classes couldn't afford to have families, that's bad, right?
No, they had families, but they lived together. That's the thing. When we say the nuclear family, what we're talking about is the structure of it, where man is like hierarchy, right? So man owes women and property, instead of the regular family where they had people like your extended family would live together and cohabitate together. That's when we say abolishing the nuclear family or abolishing the institution of that man, the hierarchical breadwinner, and the ownership to and break it so that we have more co-residents and dependent on more of a community-based family. So like you have like your extended family.
Which is super feminist because it takes the burden off of women and mothers and whatever. I just like I feel like this isn't always made super clear.
It's not purposely made super clear because it's useful for the institution of capitalism itself and our society itself to see abolish nuclear family as being abolish the family. Look at how the conservatives use it as a look. They want to go break the family down because they want to be predatory on your kids.
Right.
And yeah, some of the liberals are doing that, and none of them are really concerning themselves what that actually means in written history.
Right. So they get to be the party of so-called family values. Meanwhile, they are, that gets me. It makes me so angry.
Yeah, exactly. It's boxing it in with like a black and white sort of thinking, right? And not instead that just like with the right and the left, the blue and the red, right?
Right, and it doesn't help that there have been various leftist movements. Like the first one who comes to mind is, oh my gosh, the Russian. What's her name? I can't shit. Anyway, where they're all like, yeah, and your children should be raised in orphanages so women can become workers, and then blah 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 blah. And it's like,
who said that?
Oh my God, I can't remember her. Oh, I'm not even shitting. She was a communist in Lenin's Russia. I'm trying to remember. It was 100 fucking years ago. But I was shocked.
I know that there's some, but there's others too. Unless you read it, I'd be very skeptical about what it was actually said. Just because, like,
no, I mean, and
so many times I'm listening to people and they talk about Marxism or they talk about something, and I'm like, that's not what that means.
No, I know that's not what that. But okay, there are women who have felt that way.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, if I don't know who this person is, though, like, have you
I
read
can't remember her
person's
name.
book?
I would look it up, but you're on my phone, so.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. No, I'd be curious because a lot of the time, what I'm saying is that a lot of the propaganda has concerned itself with what messages mean and what these people mean without, and then people just taking that on as what it was
See,
without reading the
again, she was
material.
pretty straightforward with what she meant,
Oh no,
just like
there's been a
those
couple.
dudes in
There's
the
been a
18th
couple.
century.
There's been a couple of crazies out there. I
Yeah,
tell you.
right. Her and oh my gosh, and
That's why I'm curious to know the name of this person, right?
shit. The
Because
other one is I've covered them both. I covered one in a blog post and the other one in a video. Her name is Shulamith Firestone. That's the other one who's like that.
oh yeah, okay.
And doggone it, I'll get to. I'm gonna go figure this out, and you read
Yeah,
that, and I'll
we'll
yeah.
do that afterwards. I was just curious about the names of these women. Yeah, that one I'm not too. I don't know about that one. That lady, I don't know. She could have. I don't know this person. I've never even heard of this person either. I think the first time I heard of her was through you, that Firestone or whatever lady. But yeah, what was I going to say now? Oh yeah, this is what I said before too. That yeah, when we talk about destroying the nuclear family, we're not talking about destroying the actual family. It's the institution of hierarchy, and versus the institution of community, where you have. It's not just like the quote unquote base, but the external family is involved in a lot, and that's is what you see in a lot of Asian cultures too. They would have a community of family and like all live in a big household together, helping each other out. Because so yeah, that's the difference. In case anyone was interested. um, where was I now? Oh shoot, where was I? Okay, I think this is it.
Sorry, her name was Alexandra Kollontai.
Never heard of her.
I would love to know what you made of her. No, and see, the fact you've never heard of her or Shulamith Firestone pisses me off because, like, they were a little crazy, so they've just kind of been sidelined. But
Well,
they
hopefully
existed.
they fucking. If that's what they're like putting out there, then I hope.
And they said some zany stuff. But so this is one of the reasons why feminism gets a bad name. It's because of crackpots, like, you know.
Yeah.
But then you can't point to the crackpot and say, no, that was her.
Yeah, because the establishment itself is using that kind of a propaganda, and I'd be curious.
Exactly.
I'd be curious to see where they get, like, where they're from, who they are as a people.
Like, if you get a chance to look into them, I would love to know what you make of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be curious. Well, we'll talk about that maybe in the email. Like, give me some more information. I can look them up because I'm curious.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So back to where I was now. Okay. I think I remember. It was the bourgeoisie which established the social and sexual division of labor, characteristic of capitalism. The bourgeoisie declared family a private territory, in contrast to the public sphere of economic and political activity. The bourgeoisie first withdrew their women from their public sphere and shut them into their cozy little homes where they could not interfere with the warmongering, money-making, and the politicking of the man. Even the French Revolution, though fought by thousands of women, ended by excluding women from politics. The bourgeoisie, particularly the Puritan English bourgeoisie, created the ideology of romantic love as a compensation for and sublimation of the sexual and economic independence of women had before the rise of this class. Malthus, one of the important theoreticians of the rising bourgeoisie, saw clearly that capitalism needed a different type of women. The poor should curb their sexual instincts, because otherwise they would breed too many poor for the scarce of food supply. On the other hand, they should not use contraceptives, a method recommended by Condorcet in France, because that would make them lazy, because he saw a close connection between sexual abstinence and readiness to work. Then Malthus paints a rosy picture of a decent bourgeois home in which love does not express itself in sexual activity, but in which the domesticated wife sublimates the sexual instinct in order to create a cozy home for the hardworking breadwinner who has to struggle for money in a competitive and hostile world outside. As Henson Knipper and Steger point out capitalism did not, as Engels and Marx believed, destroy the family. On the contrary, with the help of the state and its police, it created the family first among the property classes, later in the working classes, and with it, the housewife as a social category. Also, from the accounts of the composition and condition of the early industrial proletariat, it appears that the family, as we understand it today, was much less the norm than it usually is believed. As we all know, women and children constitute the bulk of the early industrial proletariat. They were the cheapest and most manipulable labor force and could be exploited like no other worker. The capitalists understood well that a woman with children had to accept any wage if she wanted to survive. On the other hand, women were less of a problem for the capitalists than men. Their labor was also cheap because they were no longer organized, unlike the skilled men who had their associations as journeymen and a tradition of organizing from the guilds. Women had been thrown out of these organizations long ago. They had no new organizations and hence no bargaining power. For the capitalists, it was, therefore, more profitable and less risky to employ women. With the rise of industrial capitalism and the decline of merchant capitalism around 1830, the extreme exploitation of women's and child labor became a problem. Women whose health had been destroyed by overwork and appalling work conditions could not produce healthy children who could become strong workers and soldiers, as was realized after several wars later in the century. Many of these women did not live in proper families, but were either unmarried or had been deserted and lived, worked, and moved around with children and young people in gangs. These women had no particular material interest in producing the next generation of miserable workers for the factories. It constituted a threat to bourgeois morality, with its ideal of the domesticated woman. Therefore, it was also necessary to domesticate the proletarian woman. She had to be made to breed more workers. Contrary to what Marx thought, the production of children could not be left to the instincts of the proletariat, because, as Hinson and Knipper point out, the propertyless proletariat had no material interest in the production of children, as children were no insurance in old age, unlike the sons of the bourgeoisie. Therefore, the state had to interfere in the production of people, and through legislation, police measures, and the ideological campaign of the churches, the sexual energies of the proletariat had to be channeled into the straitjacket of the bourgeois family. The proletarian woman had to be housewifed too, in spite of the fact that she could not afford to sit at home and wait for the husband to feed her and her children. Hensolf and Kipper in 1976 analyzed this process for 19th century Germany. Their main thesis is that the family had to be forced upon the proletariat by police measures because otherwise the propertyless proletarians would not have produced enough children for the next generation of workers. One of the most important measures after the criminalization of infanticide, which had already taken place, was therefore the law which abolished the marriage prohibition for propertyless people. This law was passed by the North German League in 1868. Now proletarians were allowed to marry and have a family like the bourgeoisie or the bourgeois. But this was not enough. Sexuality had to be curbed in such a way that it took place within the confines of this family. Therefore, sexual intercourse before marriage and outside was criminalized. The owners of the means of production were given the necessary police power to watch over the morality of the workers. As with the Franco-Prussian War in 1870 to 71, a law was passed which made abortion a crime, a law against which the New Women's Movement fought, with only small success. The churches, in their cooperation with the state, worked on the souls of the people. What the secular state called a crime, the churches called a sin. The churches had a wider influence in the state because they reached more people, particularly in the countryside. In this way, the housewifeization of women was also forced into the working class. According to Henson and Knepper and others, the family had never existed among the propertyless farm servants or proletarians. It had to be created by force. This strategy worked because by that time women had lost most of their knowledge of contraception and because the state and church had drastically curbed women's autonomy over their bodies. The housewifeization of women, however, had not only the objective of ensuring that there were enough workers and soldiers for capital and the state. The creation of housework and the housewife as an agent of consumption became a very important strategy in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. By that time, not only had the household been discovered as an important market for a whole range of new gadgets and items, but also scientific home management had become a new ideology for the further domestication of women. Not only was the housewife called on to reduce the labor power costs, she was also mobilized to use her energies to create new needs. A virtual war for cleanliness and hygiene, a war against dirt, germs, bacteria, and so on, was started in order to create a market for the new products of the chemical industry. Scientific homemaking was also advocated as a means of lowering the men's wages because the wage would last longer if the housewife used it economically. The process of housewifization of women, however, was not only pushed forward by the bourgeoisie and the state. The working class movement in the 19th and 20th centuries also made its contribution to this process. The organized working class welcomed the abolition of forced celibacy and marriage restrictions for propertyless workers. One of the demands of the German delegation to the 1863 Congress of the International Working Men's Association was the freedom for workers to form a family. Heinzen and Knepper point out that the German working class organizations at that time, headed by Lassalle, fought rather for the right to have a family than against the forced celibacy of propertyless people. Thus, the liberation from forced celibacy was historically achieved only by subsuming the whole propertyless class under bourgeois marriage and family laws. As bourgeois marriage and family were considered progressive, the accession of the working class to these standards was considered by most leaders of the working class as a progressive move. The struggles of the workers' movement for higher wages are often justified, particularly by the skilled workers who constituted the most advanced sections of the working class, by the argument that the man's wage should be sufficient to maintain a family so that his wife could stay at home and look after her children and household. From 1830 to 1840 onwards, and practically until the end of the 19th century, the attitude of the German male workers and of those organized in the Social Democratic Party was characterized by what Thorstensen called proletarian anti-feminism. The proletarian anti-feminism was mainly concerned with the threat the entry of women into industrial production would pose to the men's wages and jobs. Repeatedly, at various congress of the Workers' Association and Party Congress, a demand was raised to prohibit women's work in factories. The question of women's work in factories was also discussed at the 1866 Congress of the First International in Geneva. Marx also had drafted the instructions for the delegates of the General Council to the Geneva Congress, had stated that the tendency of modern industry to draw women and children into production had to be seen as a progressive tendency. The French section, and also some of the Germans, however, were strongly opposed to women's work outside the house. The German section had, in fact, submitted the following memorandum. Quote, create conditions under which every grown-up man can take a wife, can found a family secured by work, and under which none of the miserable creatures will exist any longer, who, in isolation and despair, become victims, sin against themselves and against nature, and tarred by prostitution and trade in human flesh, the civilization. To wives and mothers belongs the work in the family and the household. While the man is the representative of the serious public and family duties, the wife and the mother should represent the comfort and the poetry of domestic life. She should bring grace and beauty to social manners and raise human enjoyment to a nobler and higher plane. End quote. Well, thanks. In this statement, we find all the hypocrisy in bourgeois sentimentalism, which Marx and Engels had castigated in the Communist Manifesto, this time, however, presented by male proletarians who want to keep women in their proper place. But neither did Karl Marx take a clear and unequivocal position regarding the question of women's work. Although in his instructions to the First International, he had maintained that women's and children's work in factories be seen as such a progressive tendency. He declared that at the same time that night work, or work which would harm women's delicate physique, should be reduced. Of course, he also considered night work bad for men, but special protection should be given to women. The tendency of proletarian anti-feminism were most pronounced among the faction of the German Social Democrats led by Lassalle. At a party congress of the Allgemeine Betriebsversammlung, can't read that Dutch word. It's ADAV in acronym. In 1866, it was stated, quote, the employment of women in the workshops and modern industry is one of the most outrageous abuses of our time. Outrageous because the material conditions of the working class are not improved but deteriorated thereby. Due particularly to the destruction of the family, the working population ends up in such a miserable condition that they lose even the last trace of cultural and ideal values they had so far. Therefore, the tendency to further extend the labor market for women has to be condemned. Only the abolition of the rule of capital will remedy the situation, where the wage relation will be abolished through positive and organic institutions, and every worker will get the full fruit of his labor. End quote. Which is interesting. I just want to point that out. That Marx advocated that women be part of the industry. I forgot about that quote. I must have forgotten about it. Okay. Well, the actual different social democracies actually fought against women in work. Interesting. Anyways, back to the. But it was not only the reformists in the Social Democratic Party who held the view that the proletarians needed a proper family. The radicals who followed Marx's revolutionary strategy had no other concept of women in the family. August Bebel and Clara Zetkin, who belonged to this wing and whom, until then, had been, with Engels, considered the most important contributors to a socialist theory of women's emancipation, advocated the maintenance of a proper family with a proper housewife and mother among the working class. Also, Bebel wanted to reduce women's employment so that mothers would have more time for the education of their children. He regarded the destruction of the proletarian family, quote, the wife of the worker who comes home in the evening, tired and exhausted, again has her hands full of work. She has to rush to attend to the most necessary tasks. The man goes to the pub and finds there the comfort he cannot find at home. He drinks. Perhaps he takes to the vice of gambling and loses thereby, even more than by drinking. Meanwhile, the wife is sitting at home, grumbling. She has to work like a brute. This is how disharmony begins. But if the woman is less responsible, she too, after returning home tired, goes out to have her recreation, and thus the household goes down the drain, and the misery doubles. End quote. Bebel did not conceive of a change in the sexual division of labor, nor a sharing of household tasks by men. He saw women mainly as mother, and did not envision a change in her role in the future. This is also the main view held by Clara Zetkin. In spite of her struggles against proletarian anti-feminism, she saw the proletarian woman as a wife and mother rather than as a worker. In 1896, she gave a speech to the party congress in Gotha, where she formulated the following main points of her theory. 1. The struggle for women's emancipation is identical with the struggle of the proletariat against capitalism. 2. Nevertheless, working women need special protection at their place of work. 3. Improvements in the conditions of working women would enable them to participate more actively in the revolutionary struggle of the whole class. Together with Marx and Engels, she was the opinion that capitalism had created equality of exploitation between men and women. Therefore, the proletarian women cannot fight against men as bourgeois feminists might do, but must fight against the capitalist class together with men. Quote, therefore, the liberation struggle of the proletarian woman cannot be a struggle like that of the bourgeois woman against the man of her class. On the contrary, it is a struggle together with the man of her class against the class of capitalists. She need not fight against the men of her class in order to break down the barriers which limit free competition. Capital's need for exploitation and development of the modern mode of production have done this for her. On the contrary, what is needed is to erect new barriers against the exploitation of the proletarian woman. What is needed is to give her back her rights as a wife, a mother, and to secure them. The final goal of her struggle is not free competition with men, but with the establishment of the political rule of the proletariat. End quote. What is striking in this statement is the emphasis on women's rights as mother and wife. She made this even more explicit later in the same speech. Quote, by no means should it be the task of the socialist agitation of women to alienate women from their duties as mothers and wives. On the contrary, one has to see to it that she can fulfill these tasks better than, in the interests of the proletariat. The better the conditions of the family, her effectiveness in the home, the better she will be able to fight. So many mothers, so many wives who inspire their husbands and their children with class consciousness are doing as much as the women comrades we see in our meetings. End quote. These ideas found a very positive echo in the party, which had, in any case, as we have seen, a rather bourgeois concept of women's role as mother and wife. This process of creating the bourgeois nuclear family in the working class and of the housewifization of proletarian women also was not restricted to Germany, but can be traced in all industrialized and civilized countries. It was pushed forward not only by the bourgeois class and state, but also by the most advanced sections of the working class, namely male skilled labor aristocracy in the European countries. Particularly for socialists, this process points to a basic contradiction, which has still not yet been solved, not even in socialist countries. If entry into social production is seen as a precondition for women's emancipation or liberation, as all Orthodox socialists believe, then it is a contradiction to uphold at the same time the concept of the man as breadwinner and head of the family, of women as dependent housewives and mothers, and of the nuclear family as progressive. This contradiction is, however, the result of a de facto class division between working class men and women. I disagree with Hanson and Kipner when they say that the working class as a whole has no material interest in the creation of the nuclear family and the housewifeization of women. Maybe working class women had nothing to gain, but working class men had. Proletarian men do not have a material interest in the domestication of their female class companions. This material interest consists, on the one hand, in the man's claim to monopolize available wage work, on the other, in the claim to have control over all money income in the family. Since money has become the main source of embodiment of power under capitalism, proletarian men fight about money, not only with the capitalists, but also with their wives. Their demand for a family wage is an expression of this struggle. Here, the point is not whether a proper family wage was ever paid or not. The point is that the ideological and theoretical consequence of this concept led to the de facto acceptance of the bourgeois concept of the family and of women by the proletariat. Marxist analysis of the value of labor power is also based on this concept, namely that the worker has a non-working housewife. After this, all female work is devalued, whether it is wage work or housework. The function of the housework for the process of capital accumulation has been extensively discussed by feminists in recent years. I shall omit this aspect here, but I would like to point out that the housewifeization means the externalization or exterritorialization of costs, which otherwise would have to be covered by the capitalists. This means women's labor is considered a natural resource, freely available like air and water. Housewifeization means, at the same time, the total autonomization and disorganization of these hidden workers. This is not only the reason for the lack of women's political power, but also for their lack of bargaining power, as the housewife is linked to the wage-earning breadwinner, to the free proletarian as a non-free worker. The freedom of the proletarian to sell his labor power is based on the non-freedom of the housewife. Proletarization of men is based on the housewifeization of women. Thus, the little white man also got his little colony, namely the family, and a domesticated housewife. This was a sign that, at last, the propertyless proletarian had risen to the civilized status of a citizen, that he had become a full member of a cultural nation. This rise, however, was paid for by the subordination and housewifeization of the woman of his class. The extension of bourgeois law to the working class meant that in the family, the propertyless man was also lord and master. It is in my thesis that these two processes of colonization and housewifeization are closely and casually interlinked. Without the ongoing exploitation of external colonies, formerly as direct colonies, today within the new international division of labor, the establishment of the internal colony, that is, a nuclear family, and a woman maintained by a male breadwinner would not have been possible. We are done for today. That is the end of the chapter. Whew, that was a long one.
Yeah, I went out with a bang, though.
Yeah, right?
Wow.
But it shows the internal contradictions, right? It really
Oh, yeah.
does.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why being against the nuclear family is the colony, the colonization of like what a family is, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I guess if I'm confused about it and I know I've been over this and over this and over this with myself, then I feel like other people surely are as well.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like she even did it right here where she just refers to the family like as a shorthand, and it's like, y'all, we can't do that.
No, but that's all we know. That's all we know. So it is the family, right? Nuclear family is the family, at least in Western countries. We will be getting into this in the next chapter. So you might be confused now, but the next chapter will go into that.
Okay, good.
More. It's the next chapter is called Housewifeization International, Women and the New International Division of Labor. So actually we'll show that right now, at least the chapters, so you can see what we're doing.
As a little preview, yeah.
As a little preview. So I don't know. I have to just move.
No.
Why?
Yeah.
Because.
Housewifeization International, Women and the New International Division leader, will be going over International Capital rediscovers third world women, why women, women as breeders and consumers,
Yes.
linkages, some examples, and conclusions. So we'll be going over like institutions and stuff like that internationally.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're not done the housewifeization thing. But I can only talk for so long.
No. Yeah, that was awesome.
No.
You just talked for like an hour straight.
I know
At
my
least.
poor voice. Is all
At least. Well, we can wrap it up and go. I know it's
Yeah,
whatever
I gotta
time it
get
is
lots of
there.
stuff done. I got so much
Yeah.
stuff going on.
I know how it is.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's tiring.
So
It is tiring.
yeah, maybe we'll run a little short this week. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about because I'm leaving on the 1st of November.
Okay.
So when is the next week?
Oh
Not next
gosh,
week,
it's
the
only
next
the
week after.
7th or something right now, right?
Yeah, no,
Or
but
the
next
8th?
week we're not doing one, and then the next week
Right.
after that, what is the date? Do you know?
So that'll be like the 22nd or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
My
So
video
that might be
goes
the
up.
last one. The next one might be the last one until I go for a vacation and have to come back.
Okay.
Just
My video
not
goes up on the 20th, which is that Monday. So, yeah.
Well, I can't wait for that. It's been a
I
while.
know. I get to go home and finish it in the last 2 weeks in the last week before it goes up, even though I had 2 months to work on it. Because do you think I'm going to get it done here? I don't think I'm going to get it done.
No, I don't think so. And you know what? Have that time to relax. Might as well.
Yeah. Maybe it'll just be that much more, awesome because they had a little break.
Yeah, you'll be more refreshed.
Yeah. Here's hoping.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for reading again.
Yeah. No problem. I enjoy my reading time with you and everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're getting a lot of traction online. Like, I don't know how many people watch them, but
between 60 and 100 views usually.
That's fine by me. That's better than nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping we've just been kind of keeping the spot warm, and I'm hoping the next few months will be more of the other videos pulling their weight.
Yeah, and getting more subscribers too, and like just more people, more eyes. Yeah.
Right.
Because some people don't want to just sit their phone down and listen to me talk for an hour.
Well, and
I find it interesting, but like, yeah, people have a
so it's gonna be
short attention spans too.
Well, and I think it just takes a lot to really get people's attention.
Yeah.
That's really what I think it is you have to actually get people's attention, which is very, very difficult these days.
It's also, like I said, it's difficult doing that, just having someone read, right? Because everything's so flashy in our society. Everything's so like quick.
Right. And people are just kind of trained to ignore things.
Yeah. It only catches their attention if it's big and flashy. It doesn't take too long.
I feel like there's some of that, but then also if you're interesting, something that's like different,
Yeah.
That definitely works too.
It depends. Some people like similarity, like similar.
Oh, I'm not saying being different gets you good attention. I'm not saying being different necessarily gets you good attention.
Oh. That's true.
But more often than not, I can't help it. So, that's part of what I'm just letting my freak flag fly from here on out. Is what I'm doing with the channel. Like, I just don't even give a shit anymore. I'm doing what I want, what I really wanted to do in the first place, which ironically has ended up being a brand pivot. So that's fun.
Yeah, right.
I said, no, I'm going to take on politics, the important stuff.
Yeah.
And that worked out so well, right? My massive following.
Well, I still got a good amount of following.
Yeah, no, and I'm not like abandoning, like, I don't know. To me, it's all one big knot You know, where like yes, politics is one like string, but you also have culture and religion and history and all this stuff, and I don't know. So I'm trying more of the intuitive, like holistic approach, more like the way I actually think. I don't know. I hope this makes some sense.
Well, I mean, for me, when I say something like politics, that includes culture and religion because it's intertwined with the politics. Because politics is basically just the way people organized society.
Well,
So
right.
it's wider than just the political parties of your specific country, right?
Oh
It
yeah.
affects everything.
Well, it's like
So
okay, politics is every group has its own politics, right?
yeah.
I guess what I mean is governance. You know,
Hmm.
when I say that, I'm like I'm going to talk about the governing bodies and the people in charge because that's what's important, right?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. So the
Oh my
difference is like
god! And
much
I
smaller.
got, I swear, I got caught up in the psyop that you mentioned earlier. It's fun.
What? Which one? What? The psyop of the transies?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that
Yep.
was, I mean, and it's just so bizarre because I had that problem in the '90s, and like I was over it by the time it went mainstream, and it's so weird. Like,
Well, I mean, I
so
think
I
that
couldn't help
it's
but feel
important
compelled
thing
to
to
say
realize
something.
that it does have an effect. That it does affect badly on women's rights. I think that's important to understand the capital drive behind it, but
Yeah,
it's just a small part of the overall picture. And so
right,
if you super focus on that, you start to become puppets of the different sort of propaganda tools
right.
that are that are using it,
And it was
right? Because
it was a big topic for me for a long time, and it still is, I guess. But like I've covered it, I don't know, more
yeah,
than it
well, because
deserves
there's only so
almost.
much for it to go, but like you need to be able to see the bigger picture and the use of that because it's not the biggest picture, it's not the biggest thing. It's a certain tactic, it's strategy that are being used to propagate, and if you're not careful, you could start to be the hand of the state, a puppet
Yeah,
yourself without realizing it.
right. Well, and
This is
like who is this? Like you shouldn't be a single issue person.
yeah,
Anyway,
right.
I feel like that
But
makes you a
you start
sitting
to
duck.
become like not a single issue person per se, but you start to tout state propaganda. Like I'm surprised still to this day how many women are valid or like very for like Zionists, and it's
Oh
because
yeah,
it's been infused in that, and right wingers and like gender conformists and like believing in that shit. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you've hyper focused on trans and you don't see the wider picture that you've lost your damn mind to something
right,
else.
right. And it's so strange how that's what I'm saying is if you become a single issue person, you become like a philosophical sitting duck
Yeah,
where all they have
yeah,
to do is wave
totally.
that one issue in your face, and you're like, ooh.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
No, I can say I figured that out a long time ago too, because I watched some people I really, cared about vote for some heinous politicians because they were pro-life.
yeah,
Being a single issue person just is that's mm,
yeah. Exactly. You have to make sure not to get hyper focused on the small tactics made. Know about them, sure. Understand how they're harmful, sure. But to become hyper focused and not understand why it's being disseminated is a big
yeah.
issue because then you become like, yeah,
Oh
easy
wow.
fodder.
And I'm suddenly understanding how my like weird experience with the whole trans issue, like I didn't happen upon it in my 30s. You understand? Like I don't
Yeah.
makes me that's why that didn't happen to me or part of it anyway because I
Well,
did not come in it because I was like sexist or whatever.
yeah, well, see that the reason why I got into it is because I was actually political before that.
Yeah.
Like I said before, right? So I saw it
Right.
coming and I was like, what the fuck? That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And so
Right.
I think women go into it because of the trans thing. And they weren't political in any other way.
Right.
And even some that have been political in another way, they got so hyper focused that they started touting really had
Right.
randomest like ideas, and I was like, well, okay, like,
Or even people who were like socially progressive, like I thought I was, okay, right?
yeah,
So you come at it from a social or a political perspective, if you know, it can snap you up, and like if you
well,
don't
that's
have
what I
any,
mean. Like, women that should know better have been like completely abandoned, like any sort of like thinking outside of that sort of like hyper focus.
right,
And so they become like their own worst enemies because now they're spouting shit that they would never have before spouted.
right, yeah, it's like they lost their goddamn minds.
Yeah.
Like literally, they don't have them anymore. You know,
No,
like to
I know.
use.
It's so sad. It's sad to see.
Yeah.
Ugh. But yeah, what a doozy. What a doozy. But you know
Anyways, I
what?
just got.
I'll let you get back to your vacation. It's like you
Okay,
should be
yeah.
having
Thank
fun.
you.
I shouldn't
Thank
be putting
you.
all this shit out like me making
Oh.
a downer of your vacation.
Oh
But
no. I
yeah.
mean, okay. If you're escapist, like if you're, oh my gosh, your vacation can't deal with one serious conversation. What are you doing? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's fragile. No, I'm gonna go back in the beach in the ocean, and it's gonna wash all this away.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That sounds wonderful. I wish I could. I think you
And
should
you
do it for
will.
me too.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
wash twice. Wash away twice for me.
I'll carry you with me in spirit as much as possible.
There we go.
And you know, you'll have yours soon. You said you're going out again next month, right?
Yes, I am. I'm going November 1st to the 12th.
Cool. So we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks on the 22nd.
Yes, on our next
Right.
get together, our next.
Oh, hey, Big Plans just showed up. What up, Big Plans? We're about to sign off.
Oh no!
I encourage you to go back and listen to it though, because it was a riveting reading. Like seriously.
Lots of interesting insights.
Oh my goodness, and so many amazing quotes. Sir Francis Bacon was a sexist fuck.
Oh yeah, some really good doozy quotes in there from some of
Yeah.
the mainstream like propagators of civilization.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, some amazing one-liners. People like, oh god, it hasn't aged well, you could say.
No, it has not.
No, the kind of stuff you'd get canceled for if you had said it within living memory, you know.
Yeah.
She was still alive.
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna head out. Thank you so much. I gotta go do my life now.
Thank you. I'll see you in a couple weeks, hon. Yeah.
See you in a couple weeks.
All right,
Bye.
bye. Bye, everybody.